Sorry. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All members of Council are present except Councillor Harrell. Councillor Harrell is attending another meeting on municipal business and will be back as quickly as he can. Ended up with a conflict in the schedule this evening. Members of Council, we have two presentations at the beginning and then several delegations a little bit later in the meeting. But it certainly gives me great pleasure this evening to welcome a very special young lady to our council chambers. I would invite Alex Saul to come forward, please, accompanied by John Patterson. And just as they come forward, I'll give you a little background. John is going to introduce Alex. He is the District Administrator, Eastern Canada and Caribbean District of Kiwanis International. Sit down. Okay, there we go. We'll just get them both settled. Alex is a very, very fine example of youth in this city, and I knew that members of council would like to join me in congratulating her. I'll just let John, on behalf of Kiwanis International, give the basic information. John?
Thank you, Mayor Diamond. It's a pleasure to be here in front of council. I met Alex in 1997 at our annual Kiwanis Builders Club convention. She was part of a group of delegates from S.J. Phillips Public School. At this convention, these various schools, there's about 12 public schools present, and they made up an overview outline of their good deeds within the school and the community. And they have fundraising events going on in the school where they raise money at dances and singing Valentines and all the good stuff that goes on in a public school. And with the money that they raise, the students choose various charities that they want to donate the proceeds to. And it was during that presentation that Alex's, I guess, her part of the program stood out amongst all the others that were making her presentation. That being said, shortly after that, I was down in the United States at a world convention in Indianapolis, and I noticed they were starting a worldwide speaking contest, and it was open for students in the public school system or the middle school system, as they refer to it in the United States. And the contest was, the topic was, how did being involved in a community group within the school benefit me, the community at large? And I went to Alex and her family, and I approached them and I said, would you be interested in preparing a little expansion on your speech that you made in public school? And they agreed. Alex made her videotape presentation in Toronto in January of this year when she was in grade 9 at O'Neill High School. I sent the tape off to our world headquarters in Indianapolis, and she was competing against speakers from each state in the United States, as well as other speakers, youth speakers from around the world. And I believe there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 videotapes sent in, 5 videotapes were selected as the finalists, and one finalist was going to be representing the youth of the world at our World Convention in Montreal this year, and that was the prize. All expense paid trip to Montreal and the opportunity to address the World Convention, which represents, I guess, probably in excess of 50 or 60 different countries around the world. Kiwanis International. And Alex was the opening speaker at the World session, and it was just a tremendous accomplishment for this young lady to be recognized by her peers around the world, other students, and like I say, the delegates from, like I say, all these different countries. I had a videotape. I was hoping I could show it because it says a lot about Alex, but if you want to see it, you can come to my house for coffee and I'll show it to you. But I'd just like to say that this lady is an outstanding young lady. She's currently in O'Neill High School as a grade 10 student, but the poise that she showed at this World Convention, it's at the New Molson Center where she spoke in the, I believe it was July the 4th, and she walked out on the stage, and I believe there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15,000 people in that arena, and she had control of the whole arena. So I'd just like to say, Alex, you did a fine job.
Thank you. So we've had a 14-year-old student from Oshawa representing 100,000 Builders Club members in 2,000 clubs worldwide. And Alex was chosen to address the conference. On behalf of citizens of Oshawa, Alex, and on behalf especially of our council, we've had a certificate prepared for you. The Corporation of the City of Oshawa presented to Alex Saul to formally recognize and congratulate you on being selected the representative of Builders Clubs worldwide to speak at the Kiwanis International Convention, Montreal, July 1998. Mayor Nancy Diamond and members of council, and it will be noted in our minutes of the formal council meeting that you've been with us, that we present this to you, and we congratulate you. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to say anything? Okay. Alex?
I would just like to say that it was a great honor to be here today, and I would like to thank you all for inviting me here.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thanks
Okay,
again.
thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Alex. Now we go to a harder issue. That was a great pleasure with Alex, and Janice, you're on next. Members of council, Janice Baker, the Acting Commissioner of Public Works, providing a briefing on the 1998 property tax and assessment changes. Come ahead, please, Janice. The presentation will be 15 to 20 minutes. We're using this opportunity to give people a catch-up on what's happening, to give our staff an opportunity. And may I say first, Janice, that I know that you're now Public Works Commissioner. We very much appreciate that you've continued to bring your expertise, your talent to this task, and you've served the city extremely well in that. One comment, could the Rogers cable just back off a little bit, please? You need to stay off the council floor. Just from the edge of the desk, if you could back up a bit. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you've indicated, we did want to do a presentation this evening to provide some information to the members of council and to the public on some of the assessment and property tax changes in 1998, and certainly they have been significant. And maybe if we could, I'll just wait, get the light.
Get the lights closest to the screen on. Those are our emergency lights, okay.
Okay, well, we did have these off, the pot lights, thank you, this afternoon. Okay, maybe that helps a little. As I said, the purpose of the presentation is to explain the assessment and property tax changes in 1998. To sort of set the stage for some of the changes, just give a highlight of, in terms of the property classes, what we were dealing with prior to these changes. In 1997 and prior years, there were basically just 3 property classes. There was the residential and farm class, the commercial and industrial class, and there was also a subset of the commercial and industrial class on the business occupancy tax. In 1998, with the new system that we've moved to, the number of property classes has been expanded to 7, which is the residential, multi-residential, commercial, industrial, farmlands, pipelines, and managed forests. And in addition to the 7 main classes, there have also been created some subclasses of the commercial class in particular, being a property class to pick up office buildings that have been designated under the assessment process, and also shopping centers. And in addition to that, we also have a subclass of the industrial class entitled large industrial. There are some other subclasses as well that deal with vacant lands and some development lands, etc., but those would be the major property classes in the new system. In terms of establishing values, the values on properties for 1998 have been established under a process that is called current value assessment. And current value is the value that the province has placed on each property and will be used to determine how much tax property owners will pay for 1998 and subsequent years. It is market value assessment in the sense that the values that have been established have been determined to be the market value of the property. And the date that has been used consistently across the province in order to determine that market value is June 30th, 1996. There will be now ongoing reassessment updates, again province-wide. The next one is scheduled to begin in 2001, and by 2004 we will be on an annual update process for assessment. As I've indicated, the new system is province-wide, and it was intended to bring consistency to assessment across the province, but in updating to the new values, it has resulted in some shifting of the property tax burden. In terms of the value that has been placed on your property, certainly a question that's been asked is, can I appeal my assessment? Earlier this year, all property owners would have received a notice of assessment which would have indicated the property class that your property was placed in, a description of your property, and also an estimated current value of your property. In terms of appealing that value, if in fact you disagreed with it, the deadline for the appeals was established at August 31st, 1998, which of course has passed. However, recently the minister announced that the province is considering extending this deadline for appeals to October 30th, 1998. It is important to point out that in fact that is a proposed extension. It is not law yet, and I understand that it is being considered as something to be dealt with when the House reopens, I believe on the 28th of September. So if this deadline is extended, and that's certainly an important point, if the deadline is extended and you are still concerned that your property is not valued correctly, there's really a two-step process that you can go through. First of all, you can request that the Regional Assessment Office review your assessment and reconsider the value that's been placed on it. And if in fact there has been an error or something incorrectly applied to your assessment, then the assessment commissioner does have the ability to make that correction. If the deadline is extended, and if you're not satisfied with the response that you get from the assessor, or if you don't wish to go through the reconsideration process because there isn't a requirement that you do both steps, you can appeal directly to the Assessment Appeal Board. There is a fee that applies. In the case of residential appeals, it's $20 per appeal, and in the case of commercial and industrial, It is $50 per appeal. Now move into some information about how the property taxes are calculated for 1998. There are really three components to the property tax bill. There is the city portion, the City of Oshawa portion. There is also a portion that is collected for the region of Durham, and there is also a portion that is collected on behalf of various school boards, so the education portion of your bill. The City of Oshawa does bill and collect for all three levels, so you will only receive one bill to collect the three components. Your final tax bill is a result of your assessment, and we've just talked briefly about the assessment issues. There are taxation policy decisions that impact your bill, the budgets that are set by the region and the city, and the education rates that have been established by the province. So all of these components interact to determine your bill for 1998. In terms of setting taxation policy, much of the policy is laid out in legislation as established by the province and is not subject to change. There are some issues which the region of Durham has been given responsibility for deciding. So where there is discretion under the new process, it is generally the region that has been provided with the responsibility for setting of taxation policy. Where the regional council makes decisions with respect to policy, they will apply to both the regional and all of the local municipalities within the region. So there are 8 municipalities within the region of Durham, including Oshawa, and all of us are now required to follow the same set of policies. Moving on to the budget component of the taxation issue. In terms of the City of Oshawa's budget, from 1992 to 1998, the City of Oshawa has not increased property taxes for Oshawa taxpayers. So again, that reinforces that for 1998, there is again a 0% increase in the taxes at the city level. And this has been achieved despite declining grant revenues from the province and also modest assessment growth due to a recession. And this is a graph that indicates the net expenditures for the City of Oshawa for the years 1992 through to 1998, showing that since 1992, when the city's budget in fact was just over $62 million, it has now declined to about $57 million for 1997, and it's remained flat for 1998. So in 1998, it is again just at the $57 million mark. In terms of the actual tax levy, the total 1998 tax levy requirement of $50.1 million for Oshawa is unchanged from 1997. Of course, the difference between the tax levy and the net expenditures would be other revenue from program fees and provincial grants, etc. In terms of the regional and education taxes, there has been an increase in the combined regional and education taxes to be paid by Oshawa taxpayers in 1998. And to illustrate, this is a graph that shows the education portion and the regional portion for 1997, which is the first set of bars, and then the second bar on the right-hand side shows the 1998 distribution. And as you can see, in 1997, the education portion was significantly higher than in 1998. And that's primarily because of the reduction in the residential education portion that the province announced. However, the regional portion has in fact increased significantly, and the total of the two, the combination of the education and regional portion in 1998, and this is just strictly for the city of Oshawa, is higher than the amount that was collected on behalf of those two levels in 1997. In terms of who makes the decision and who sets the tax rate, the City of Oshawa sets its own tax rates in relation to its own budget, and the Region of Durham now sets its own tax rates as well. And the province provides the region with regulations to set the education tax rates, and in fact, in the case of the residential portion, in fact, the province has set the education tax rate province-wide. So everyone in the province in the residential class will pay the same tax rate on their education portion. These are the 1998 tax rates for Oshawa. The residential farm class rate is shown at the top at 1.78%, and the rates for the rest of the classes are shown as well. And they do vary between the various property classes. So the tax rate, which I've just shown you, which is expressed as a percentage, is multiplied by your property's current value assessment to determine the amount of property taxes that you will pay for 1998. And this is an example of how the taxes would be distributed for a residential property with an assessed value of $150,000. The city's tax rate is 0.57. The regional rate for residential would be 0.75, and I'm reading from the second column on the chart. And the education tax rate would be 0.46, so those three components add up to the 1.78% that was shown on the previous chart. And the total taxes for that particular property, again, a property with an assessed value of $150,000 for 1998, would be $2,670, of which 32% would be for the City of Oshawa, 42% would be for the region, and 26% would be for the education portion or the school boards. Of course, one question is, will my taxes go up or down? And I think right now, until each of you receives the tax bill, the answer we can give you is some will go up, some will go down, and some will see no change. And the reason for the variability and the different impacts on different properties are varied. Of course, there are the assessment-related changes which have had different impacts across the city. Just the movement from the old assessment system and the old base year to the new assessment system and the 1996 base year will have created some shifting in the tax base. In addition, the new system was applied region-wide as opposed to within each area municipality. So that has also created some shifting of the tax burden within the municipalities within the region. And again, there are some budgetary increases at the regional level which will also have an impact. So if my taxes go up, will I have to pay it all at once in 1998? For the residential and farm class, the answer to that question is not necessarily. The Region of Durham has approved a phase-in program in the residential and farm class only. And the phase-in program will cover the next 3 years. So the 1998, 99, and 2000 municipal taxation years. So if you've experienced an increase with some limitations that I'll describe in a moment, you will be fully phased in and paying your full 1998 tax level by the year 2000. The phase-in program is by legislation only applies to assessment-related tax increases and decreases. So some of the budgetary impacts that might come about as a result of increases at the regional level are not eligible to be phased in. In terms of the phase-in program, you must pay the first $500 of any increase. And conversely, because the legislation requires that the funding of the phasing of the increases is done by withholding some of the decreases over the 3-year period as well, the first $423 of any decrease you would also get in 1998. And I have some more detail in a moment as to specifically how the phase-in would work. When you get your tax bill, your assessment-related tax increase or decrease will be identified on your tax bill, so you will be able to see if in fact your taxes are eligible to be phased in. In Oshawa, we have approximately 25,100 properties, residential and farm properties, that have assessment-related tax increases. And about 3,900 of those have assessment-related increases that are greater than $500 and therefore which would be eligible for the phase-in. So approximately 5 in 6 have increases, assessment-related tax increases that are less than $500 and therefore are not eligible for the phase-in. And to give you an idea of how a phase-in would work, if your assessment-related increase is determined to be $800, and there is a legislated formula by which the assessment-related change is calculated, then you would be paying an additional $500 in 1998, which is the maximum amount, and the balance, or the difference between the 500 and the 800, you would pay in 1999. And in that particular case, you would be phased in effectively in 2 years. If your assessment-related increase is $1,400, then you would pay $500 in 1998. You would pay the additional $500 in 1999, and then in the year 2000, you would be billed the remaining $400, and then would be phased in over the 3-year period. If your assessment-related increase is $2,100 as an example, or really anything in excess of $1,500, then the change will be simply divided by 3, and an equal amount will be added to your bill in each of the 3 years, 1998, 99, and 2000. And similarly, on the decrease side, we have approximately 13,600 residential or farm properties that have assessment-related tax decreases. And approximately 2,300 of those have assessment-related tax decreases in excess of the $423 threshold, which again will be phased in. And it works in a very similar fashion to the increases. If your decrease is $723, you would get a reduction of $423 in 1998 and an additional $300 in 1999. Again, bearing in mind that eligible means it's assessment-related only. For an assessment-related decrease of $1,000, you would receive a reduction of $423 in 1998, an additional $423 in 1999, and the balance of $154 in the year 2000. And if your decrease is in excess of $1,269, or 3 times the $423, then it will be evenly divided over the 3-year period. So an example of an assessment-related decrease of $1,800 would be phased in at an even $600 per year over 3 years. Another question is for seniors and people on fixed incomes, is there some relief that can be provided? There is a tax deferral program for low-income seniors and low-income persons with disabilities. That is there was a mandatory provision in the legislation that relief be provided. Under the program that the region has approved, seniors who are currently entitled to the federal guaranteed income supplement, and disabled persons who are currently entitled to the Ontario Disability Support Program are eligible to apply for the deferral program. The program is also available to persons who meet the age and income requirements but are currently not recipients of support under the federal GIS program, and the intent of that was to provide the benefit to people who might be receiving pensions from countries other than Canada, but who have similar income levels. And application forms for the program will be available at City Hall, and it is a program that you must apply for in order to receive. In terms of how the tax deferral program would work, if you are a senior receiving GIS, etc., and you're eligible under that criteria, if your taxes increase by more than $100 or 5%, whichever is higher, you can apply for the tax deferral program. You must own and occupy your residence, and the program only covers one principal residence. You must make an annual application to provide evidence that you're still eligible. There will be an interest charge on the deferral program, but it will be charged simple interest, so we won't charge interest on interest. It would simply be on the principal balance outstanding. And the interest rate that's been approved is prime less 2%, so in 1998 that would be equivalent to 4.5%. I think the intent is to establish the rate each year in January. If at any time, if you've benefited from the deferral program, if your property is transferred or sold, at that point, any taxes that have been deferred will have to be paid. There's also a mandatory provision that provides some assistance to charities. By law, municipalities must provide a tax rebate of at least 40% of their property tax to charities who occupy commercial and industrial property, and it's a very specific provision relating to a commercial and industrial property only. And again, this is a program where the charity must make an application. We will have application forms available at City Hall. In terms of when we actually expect to send out the tax bills, I'm sure people are eagerly awaiting them. The tax bills are scheduled to be mailed on October 2nd, 1998, so most people can expect to receive their tax bill within the first week of October. In terms of the due dates, when you would be expected to pay your installments, there will be an installment that will be due on October 30th and a second installment that will be due on November 30th. Will you get more information? Yes. We will include an information pamphlet with your tax bill, which will provide some additional information on the new system. And we will also provide phone numbers and contact numbers throughout the pamphlet so that you can call and get more information if you need to. We will provide this evening some numbers that you can call. If you're interested in information on any of the policy decisions that were made by the Region of Durham, you can call 905-571-3311. For questions that you might have about your assessment and the appeal process for assessments, which is managed by the province through the Regional Assessment Office, you can call 905-432-8444. For questions about your tax bill when you receive it in early October, we will have special phone lines that will be in service effective October 1st. so that we can handle the questions from the public. It will be a 24-hour-a-day automated information line, and the phone number, and again I emphasize this will be in effect on October 1st, will be 905-725-6802. And if you call that number during regular business hours and you wish to speak to an individual once you've listened to some of the recorded information, you would simply press 0 and you would be connected to an information officer who would be pleased to help you. That's the information that we wanted to provide this evening. I'm not sure if there'd be any questions, Madam Mayor.
Thanks very much. Questions, members of council? Councillor Brian Nicholson?
Just one question that dealt with the appeal procedure and dates. You indicated in the write-up that the people would only be allowed to call the assessment office if the appeal process was extended to October 30th. Would it not be correct that you can call the assessment office anytime you want, you just can't appeal their decisions until legislation is brought through?
Yes, that's correct.
Further questions, members of council? One question, Commissioner. The pre-approved payment bills have just gone out, and I'm sure that there will be some confusion for individuals because they have to pay by the end of November because the new rate comes in for December. Does this speak to the schedule, and especially if someone wants to then get out of the pre-approved payment, they can do so?
Certainly, the pre-approved payment schedule that we have, people can sign up for that program at any time, or alternatively, they can opt out at any time. We have been working with the process to allow people to continue to pay with their monthly remittances. And of course, there will be a reconciliation process that we will have to go through once the amounts have been determined to see if there are any adjustments that would need to be applied if people have overpaid or underpaid, because up to now we've not been able to determine the precise amount. But that's an ongoing process with the staff, and we certainly encourage the use of the pre-authorized payment. It's convenient for the taxpayers, certainly.
Those letters have just gone out in the last few days as opposed to October 1st?
I would have to ask Mr. Tellis that question. Yes, apparently yes.
And the other thing, again, I'm concerned that we're saying it's a zero tax increase, which is absolutely correct from the city's perspective in our overall budget. But that does not mean that for every single household it's the same. If you could just
That's right.
changes in assessment.
Okay. The City of Oshawa's budget is really just one component of the changes that have happened with the taxes in 1998. Certainly one of the significant issues is the change to the new assessment system and moving from I think an old and fairly outdated process to a 1996 base year, and that will cause shifting of that amount of taxes. Some property owners will find that their taxes have gone up. Some others will find that in fact they've experienced a decrease. Some will find that their taxes haven't changed. I think if we of course have looked at areas of the city, and within neighborhoods it's fairly consistent within a small area, but certainly within the city there are areas where you see that generally the taxes have gone up. There are other areas where you find that they've gone down. So I think, as you've indicated, it is important to emphasize that the fact that the budget has remained at zero does not guarantee that each individual's property tax bill will be unchanged from 1997.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Councillor Gray?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just recently I've started to get some calls from multi-res, and particularly the building owners who have small buildings and some who own large buildings. I was wondering if you could explain the rationale. As you know, sixplexes are taxed at the regular residential rate, and anything over 7 units then is charged the multi-res rate. And the reason why I ask you to give this clarification is, unfortunately, our staff are giving out some information that the politicians here at the city made this decision, and of course this is not the case, so I was hoping you could elaborate on that.
Sure. The distinction between the residential property class and the multi-residential class is contained in the assessment regulations. So when the province made the determination to move to the new property classes, they determined and they defined the multi-residential as buildings that had 7 units or greater. So that is, I guess, a regulated or a legislated requirement or a distinction that's being made between the two classes.
Thank you very much. Do you think we could perhaps get that message out to some of the staff who are taking these types of calls now? Because as I say, when they start giving out this erroneous information, I don't believe it does us any good at all.
Anything further? Okay. Thank you very much again, Commissioner, and that was very clear. An excellent presentation. I'm sure you'll make it many times as we move to the new system. But great help. Thank you. Members of Council, could I have a motion on the adoption of the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Dykstra. Are there any errors or omissions on the motion? Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motion on the items to be referred, items 1 to 5. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Kolodzy. On 1, 4, and 5. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 2, Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Yes, move myself, second by Councillor Mike Nicholson, that correspondence item number 2 from the Ministry of Natural Resources regarding the draft Natural Heritage Reference Manual be received for information.
Thank you. For my information at least, would you and your seconder speak to why you would not have this go to planning?
I'd like to defer that to the Commissioner of Planning, as it is his motion. I'm merely reading it to you.
Would the real Councillor Nicholson please stand up? Mr. Gachad.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, this documentation we received from the Ministry of Natural Resources is really a very technical manual. It doesn't really contain areas of very substantial policy issues that would necessitate, I guess, staff bringing forward a report back through the committee.
Okay, thank you. On item number 2, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 3, Councillor Nicholson.
Same mover, same seconder, that the request from Joya Wisniak for notification in future of any reports and business coming before Council concerning the hospital redevelopment and neighborhood impacts be received for information, and Ms. Wisniak be advised that she will receive notice of any reports/items concerning Lakeridge Health, Oshawa, in accordance with the Department of Development Planning Services notification policies and procedures.
Thank you. On the motion, Councillor Clark.
I ask what those procedures would be, please.
I'll give you the same response I gave to the Mayor when she asked her question.
Madam Mayor, when we are processing development applications, we of course have, if it's, for example, a rezoning application or a committee adjustment application, there are specific notice requirements in the Planning Act that require us to notify within 120 meters of any particular application. Plus, if we receive notice from any particular interest, property owner or interested party, and they wish to be notified proceedings, then we add them to our notification list, and they're sent notice of any meetings that a particular application is dealt with.
Okay, so this request would then figure into a concerned citizen indicating that they wanted to get circulated? So what type of information would she be receiving? Notice of meetings?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if there are meetings pursuant to any particular application, that the public would normally receive notice, and the interested parties would normally receive notice, she would receive notice of that. We just add her to our list.
Okay, through you, Madam Mayor, if it was general procedure that the notification only go out through an ad in the newspaper, would she be notified otherwise, or would the expectation be that the notice in the newspaper would be sufficient notice to her?
Madam Mayor, the departmental policy is not to send out specific notice because of the administrative cost of doing that, and that the City Council's dictated procedures for notice include notice through the newspaper. So we would not send out a specific notice to people who would otherwise normally see that in a newspaper ad.
But notices that are sent out by the department are generally circulated to members of council. And so if someone thinks that an interested person might miss the notice in the paper, a member of council could provide that. Okay, on the motion,
Thank you.
those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Item number 31, a proposal for the creation of a green belt boundary around the Greater Toronto Area. Motion for direction. Receive. Councillor Nicholson?
If we could build it around Toronto, I'd be tempted to support it. But
I don't think it was for a moat, Councillor.
so therefore, a moat would be nice, yes. Keep our taxes from flowing inwards. I'd like to move this be received for information.
Thank you. Seconded by? Councillor Akert. On the motion, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 32 is the ARC requesting an application for a corporation grant for next year. Councillor Gray.
Motion to advise the corporation grant policy.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dykstra. To speak to it, Councillor Nicholson.
I will not be supporting the motion. I think it clearly indicates the error of our policy by having a policy that says that no one can apply. And I argued against the policy when it came forward. It basically says that there aren't special cases. And I believe that in this case specifically, but in many other cases generally, there are always special cases that should be considered on their merit. And to simply have a blanket policy that says that if you're not on the list by a certain date, a date that no one knew they had to be on the list by, I might add, then you can't apply for a corporation grant from this corporation. I always believed that was wrong. I believed it was wrong when we instituted it back in 1996. I believe it is not the best interest of the corporation of the city of Oshawa or our taxpayers or our citizens to have a hardline policy like this. I believe on the specifics of the ARC, we have a situation where we have a very needy organization that's providing a very important service to the children and youth of our community. The alternate that's before them is to be basically living on the street, and I find that as a parent and as a counselor to be both unacceptable and something I could not defend. And if there are opportunities on merit alone for any group to come forward to at least have the opportunity to make an application and make their case, this, I think, outlines an opportunity before that. If this motion is defeated, I would be pleased to move a motion to have this group submit an application and be considered on its merit, and then council can make a decision at that time. I don't think we can afford as a council to simply turn our back on a very needy organization such as this.
Thank you. On the motion, those in favor? Opposed? The motion is lost. Councillor Nicholson?
That this item be referred to the Development and Corporate Services Committee, or if there's another appropriate committee, I'm not sure which one it would fall into. I'm assuming it would be this one, for an application to be received and reviewed on its merit.
You've not said specifically corporation grants, so that
Only because
puts
fire
it in a
protection got
broad
rolled in, yeah.
Emergency.
Whatever
Okay.
you...
On the motion, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm pleased to see that this is going to be referred to a committee, and specifically we have looked at this or have received a presentation from the ARC at the Health and Social Services Committee at the region. They're in a very unique circumstance right now where the funding of their group that organized them and came before the Health and Social Services Committee to see that the ARC established, in fact, is now wanting to kind of disclaim responsibility and finding it, I guess, too difficult a task to do their original food kitchen as well as this job. But I think that I'm really pleased that they had come to us because I think it's a very necessary function. I'm sure that through the community and various sources we can come up with some kind of long-term thing, but I would hate to see this fall through the cracks in the interim because of one group pulling out and there not being anything there to come in and fill the gap. So I really think we should be entertained, and that's why I like the idea of it being a broad motion, not to say direction specifically for a corporation grant. We need to look at anything possible to help keep this afloat.
Thank you. Councillor Clausy, then Councillor Bryan.
Yes, I'd like to move an amendment to that particular motion that all groups who are worthy could make other applications to the city for corporation grants.
I can't accept that
Sounds
as
friendly.
a policy statement. This is one item.
Well, if you're going to be happy with one, you got to be happy with others coming forward.
Well, but you'd
They're all meaty.
Councillor Claus, you just vote against this one if that's your way.
Madam Mayor,
But
I'd
we
like
can't create a policy statement here. We have one letter, one piece of correspondence that we're dealing
Well, I
with.
challenge the chair on your ruling.
Yep. The chair says that we're dealing with a piece of correspondence, not establishing an overall policy, and that the motion specifically says, speak to the city generally, not specifically corporation grant. Those who would support the ruling of the chair, please. Those who would oppose? Okay, the ruling of the chair holds. Next, Councillor Brian Nicholson.
First of all, just on the general idea of dealing with this specific item, I wanted to echo the comments that Councillor Clark brought forward. We're actually at the region looking at financial options right now to see what the region can do, either through our existing social services input or other avenues, to determine whether we can provide assistance to this organization. I would hope that the City of Oshawa would also be a partner in this process and see what opportunities can be brought forward in the next little while to provide this much-needed service. I received a package from a member of the new citizen group, which is in fact organizing itself to both raise funds and provide support to this organization. And I was quite amazed at the numbers of people that are served by this organization. We're not talking about 5 or 6 kids. We're not talking about 10 or 20 people. We're talking really hundreds of youth and young adults in our community who are served by this organization on an annual basis. And I, for one, I just could not, in good conscience, avoid my responsibility to at least take a look at their procedures and see what we can do. On the side to that, I wholeheartedly support the point that Councillor Clausey has raised, that it may be time that we, in fact, go back and look at our policy regarding corporation grants and amend it at another venue to have it a little more flexible and show that we still are a city with a heart.
On the motion, Councillor Gray.
Much. I think we've got to be somewhat cautious here. When we know that the region is looking at special circumstances funding for the ARC, and then we get involved with funding, some like to call this partnership approach. I would say that it's just the same taxpayer paying twice. If you're going to fund it through the region of Durham, fine, because our taxpayers are regional taxpayers. If you're going to fund it through the city level, then fine, fund it through the city level. But don't kid ourselves by funding it at both levels and thinking that somehow, we're doing a great thing. Fund it at one or the other, but eliminate the duplication.
Thank you. On the motion, those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. We have one additional piece of correspondence from the Head Injury Association of Durham Region on behalf of the Oshawa Road Safety Challenge Committee. Councillor Clark?
Motion to receive for information. I'd like to speak to it.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Peter-Rebecki. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. I was very pleased to having met with Mr. Murphy. This item is on the Safe City campaign that Mr. Joe Marion brought to Council. And we have had a challenge, I guess, basically issued by Mr. Brown, the city manager, to the Road Safety Challenge Group to take on the Safe City campaign and be the kind of impetus for getting this going, and as opposed to starting from scratch. So we have met with Mr. Marion and Mr. Murphy, and I'm very pleased to say that as this letter states, that the Safe City campaign is being taken on by the Oshawa Road Safety Challenge Committee as a whole, not just individuals. They've taken on as a whole, and this is being done, I guess, in coordination or with the knowledge of Mr. Brown and Mr. Stephen Bedford, who's the Director of Community Services. So the reason I want to just receive this for information at this point, this letter indicates that there's a meeting going on October the 8th, and that will be the initial meeting to, I guess, commence the Safe City campaign. And probably what will come out of that, at least to start off with, will be a challenge to groups that will be able to participate in this and see either what they have to offer in terms of things that are already established that could qualify for being part of the Safe City campaign, or see what they think could be an additional task that they could perform. So I think that this has got the ball rolling, and I'm really pleased to see that.
I'd just like to add a clarification. There was no challenge to Mr. Brown or to the road safety group. I suggested that they be invited to participate because it was an effective group that was operating in the city on a road safety, and it seemed to fit very well with Mr. Joe Marion's information that he had picked up through Block Parents. But it was very warmly received by that committee, and they are quite keen to expand their mandate. Councillor
Absolutely.
Dykstra.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will not be supporting the motion that is before us for the simple reason in the correspondence that we've received, it is that they're requesting a representative from the city of the Community Services Department. And so I will not be supporting the motion. And if this gets defeated, then I'd like to come back with another motion.
Okay. Council is still going to have to determine the kind of support that will be given. By inviting this group to take it on, they are up and running. They have been working together for a couple of years, but we still have to clarify. There has yet been no representation from council, or indeed if there should be, and there hasn't been any direct involvement. I think, Mr. Brown, your hope from your report was that this group would come back to us and tell us what resources they would need.
Yeah, I think the initial request was to see if they would be interested in taking on a Safe City campaign on behalf of the city of Oshawa. My expectation would have been that they would have, well, I'm very pleased to say that they have accepted it, and now I think I think what has to happen is that they have to develop a program, and I would think the city certainly should be aware of and involved in the development of the program.
Okay. If a member of council wished to move an amendment to have a staff person attend, that could be done, or it could be left, have the initial meeting happen. I mean, I don't believe that the intention is that our staff are going to be out there doing the Safe City. It's supposed to be a community effort, not a city hall. Councillor Nicholson?
I appreciate the comments, but I think there also is areas we have to look at, depending on what their program is, who would be the appropriate staff member to attend. If it's going to be transit-oriented, should it be a transit representative? If it's going to be planning-oriented, should it be a planning representative? If it's going to be operationally oriented, should it be I think later on we can appoint the appropriate people to support them wholeheartedly, but we have to define their program first before we can decide who's the appropriate person.
So the motion at the moment is that we receive it for information. We are informed that the first meeting is taking place, and as it would now stand, council will subsequently follow up when we get some feedback from the group. Okay? On the motion, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Could I have a motion to hear on the delegations, please? Thank you. Seconded by moved by Councillor Peter Rebecki, seconded by Councillor Brian Nicholson. On the motion, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. First is Lake Ridge Health Corporation, Judy Spring Chair and Brian Lemon CEO, to talk about the new hospital corporation. Give you a seat on either side here. Okay. Judy Spring is certainly no stranger to us, and I'd like to welcome you, Mr. Lemon, to the community and to a very challenging job to pull all those hospitals together. Judy, you starting?
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to update members of council about Lake Ridge Health Corporation. I've been asked to speak to you about governance issues, but I want to touch briefly on the amalgamation, board of trustees, the roles of the hospitals, and redevelopment at the Oshawa site. On July 31st, 1998, Lake Ridge Health Corporation was formed following the direction of the Health Services Restructuring Commission, and the result of that amalgamation was that the hospitals in Whitby, Oshawa, Bowmanville, Uxbridge, and Port Perry merged into one health corporation, one hospital body, by letters patent of amalgamation with the typical legal bylaws for administration and medical, dental, and midwifery. Together, the new health corporation serves 500,000 people, and a new vision was established, putting patients first, and that vision is working together within an integrated health system to achieve wellness and excellence in care for our rural and urban communities. And we already see that at work. And as an example, what we find is that the benefit of that integrated health organization is that it allows us to, in certain instances, transfer patients who require an alternate level of service, who are waiting for nursing home beds, to the smaller community hospitals, opening up beds at the Oshawa site where a higher level of critical care can be given. The Board of Trustees is made up of 21 elected trustees and 5 ex officio members, and that board was, the composition of that board was governed by the Health Services Restructuring Commission directive. Now, the new board, there was a nomination committee whose composition was also structured by the Health Services Restructuring Commission. But of that 21-member board, what we have is 10 board members who came forward from the previous boards. So those board members were recommended by their boards, and we had 4 people come from Oshawa General, 2 from Whitby, 2 from Bowmanville, and 2 from North Durham, which is Port Perry and Uxbridge. There were 11 new board members, and the composition was similar. 4 from the area served by the Oshawa Hospital, 2 from Bowmanville, 2 from Whitby, and 2 from North Durham, and the chair was selected from the region at large. Now, for the new board, our priorities, or our first priority, was certainly the hiring of a CEO. And last Monday, Brian Lemon joined us, and we were very pleased with that meeting that milestone, in that Brian came to us with a 20-year background in healthcare, and he had been working for the past 2 years as transition manager, handling the amalgamations of hospitals in Sudbury and Ottawa, and prior to that point in time had been the president of Capital Health Authority, which is a major hospital in Edmonton. So he brought that background to our region. In terms of other board priorities, after certainly the hiring of a CEO, it was a priority to set up the standing committees. Now, the administration bylaw determined what our standing committees were, but just as you, following the election last November, had to determine what members of council would sit on your standing committees, we as a board also had to determine who would sit from our board on our standing committees. We also spent a day and a half, the new board, setting priorities and having an education session and doing some team building just a week or so ago. For the roles of our hospitals, Lakeridge Health Oshawa will continue as the major tertiary or specialized care center for the region. Regional acute care services such as cancer, dialysis, genetics, mental health, substance abuse services will be available to everyone in the region at the Oshawa site. Lakeridge Health Bowmanville, Port Perry, and Uxbridge will continue to provide primary and some secondary care to their immediate communities. As you know, Lakeridge Health Whitby is directed to close as an acute care hospital. The Health Services Restructuring Commission has directed that that site close as an acute care facility on March 31st. And another of the priorities of the board is that by December we have to have proposed a plan to the Ministry of Health for the use of that building. Now, in terms of the redevelopment, the Health Services Restructuring Commission has directed that the major and long overdue redevelopment of the Oshawa site is to go ahead immediately. In order to accommodate the growth in services which Oshawa and Durham residents will demand, the Health Services Restructuring Commission has allocated their portion of the funding for the new emergency and surgical suite, increased outpatient facilities, a new mental health and adolescent mental health care and complex continuing care wing, and the Durham Regional Cancer Center. Now, all of these services will be built and operational by the year 2003, but the Durham Regional Cancer Center will be open in 2001. In addition, renovations, upgrades, and expansions are also part of the master plan, and we are encouraged by the progress with the Ministry of Health on the redevelopment of Pinewood for substance abuse services. In addition, the Oshawa site has been designated a regional pediatric center within the Children's Health Network and will be required to upgrade its services to provide additional pediatric services to Oshawa residents and residents in the region. With such a complex project, the funding support of this community within the Setting the Pace campaign, the financial agreement with the City of Oshawa, and the strong cooperation of the city are vital components to ensure that with the approvals now in place, the project moves ahead as quickly as possible. As you know, the $7 million financial agreement with the City of Oshawa has been used to contribute $350,000 in 1996-97 and $1.38 million of in-kind contributions such as land, permits, and federal provincial municipal infrastructure funding for the construction of Hospital Court. I am told that this agreement will soon be amended to confirm that the funds designated by the City of Oshawa will specifically be used at the Lakeridge Health Oshawa site. The strong support of the City of Oshawa and the provision of health care services through Lakeridge Health Oshawa is vital to the growth and preservation of quality care for Oshawa residents. The collaboration of the planning staffs of the city and the hospital has been instrumental in bringing the redevelopment of the Oshawa site to this stage. And on behalf of the Board of Trustees of Lakeridge Health Corporation, I would like to thank the city staff for their cooperation and professionalism, something I experienced in large quantities in the past. I would like to offer to continue the informal exchange of information on issues of interest to council members. And as you know, in the past, on a couple of occasions, we've had teach-ins, and what I'm suggesting to you is that we would be very pleased to invite you to Lakeridge Health Oshawa later in the fall for a teach-in so that we can update you in more detail about progress that's being made at the Oshawa site. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to bring you up to date and for your continued support. And I know that Brian Lemon would like to make a few comments to you.
Thank you very much. Just briefly, Your Worship and councillors, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to meet the council, to accompany Mrs. Spring. This is, as she indicated, my first week, or the beginning of my second week on the job, so I'm very much in an orientation stage at this point, going around to the various facilities, meeting people, and investigating issues. And there is a lot to learn to get up to speed. My very first priority will be to get in a management team in place to help me with the challenge of making the new corporation a reality. And we will carry on with the appointment of medical leadership and then begin a fairly extensive planning process as we move forward with the redevelopment of the Oshawa Hospital and many other of the challenges. We will also be working with physicians, nurses, frontline healthcare workers of all kinds in order to do the very detailed and in-depth planning that needs to be done to bring about the changes that we want to see and were contemplated with the creation of Lakeridge Health. I look forward very much to working with your staff in the coming weeks, getting to know them a little bit greater depth. You are a very important organization to our future. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. May I, first of all, I should have also congratulated our former colleague that Judy Spring has been elected the chair of the new Lakeridge Hospital Corporation, and it's a tremendous challenge that you've taken on, Judy, and we're very pleased that it's someone from Oshawa. I'm glad you're doing it. Questions from members of council? Councillor Goodrich.
Welcome, Judy, back to the council chambers, and congratulate you also. One of the things that I hear constantly, and I'm sure many councillors will agree with me, and you've touched on it very briefly, I'm not looking for a huge explanation, is the donations that come from the city and for the campaign that was a lot of us were involved in over the years. Could you just expand on that just a little bit so that people understand where that money is going now that we have a new Lakeridge Hospital Association or
Certainly, Councillor Pedrovecki. The money that has been donated by the City of Oshawa and the money that has been donated for setting the pace will be specifically used at Lakeridge Health Oshawa, the former Oshawa General Hospital. Just as funds that have been raised in Bowmanville, funds that have been raised in Port Perry and Uxbridge will be used at those sites.
Thank you very much, Judy.
Further questions? Councillor Clausy.
One question. Congratulations, Judy, on your
Thank you.
chairmanship. You mentioned earlier in your discussion that 21 individuals were elected, and I would like you to touch upon that because I think it's very important to notify the public if they want to be involved in participating with this new organization, how they get about to get elected and to serve as you have served on this.
Certainly, I'd be pleased to expand on that. 10 individuals were selected by the former hospital boards, and they came forward to the new board as part of the 21 individuals. 11 new members, myself included, applied through an ad that was placed in the local newspaper for consideration for appointment to the new board. And so the 11 new members were selected by a nomination committee that was made up of representatives from all of the hospitals and from the District Health Council and from a network of local organizations such as Red Cross and Victorian Order of Nurses. Now, in setting up the new board, in accordance with the Health Services Restructuring Commission's direction, of the 21-member board, the term of 7 members will expire in 1 year, another 7 will expire after 2 years, and another 7 after 3. And those people can all, of course, request application for reappointment, but I anticipate that we'll place an ad in the paper in a similar manner to what was done this spring, and that members of the public will have an opportunity to apply. And I didn't mention that, in addition, there are 5 ex officio board members, and one of those is the president, who's here with me tonight. There are 3 physicians, and a representative of the auxiliaries sits on the board as well.
Okay, what you're telling me, Judy, is that there's no longer a hospital association or things like that where people go and can voice their concerns publicly. In other words, there's 21 people appointed by various boards. In other words, you're not elected by the general
No,
people.
in the case of this board, 10 came forward as recommendations from the former board, and 11 were selected by a nomination committee.
I understand.
Now, when our terms expire, then individuals from the public served by the 5 hospital sites will have an opportunity to apply to sit on this board. Just as council is an open process, the hospital board meets as an open board. We meet on the last Thursday of each month, and members of the public are welcome to attend our board meetings, just as with council, members of the public are here tonight.
Okay. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Just so I can be clear, and I wasn't going to ask this because Councillor Clausy had raised it, who appointed the nominating committee?
The nominating committee, the nomination committee was appointed, or rather the individuals who would sit on that committee were in accordance with a directive of the Health Services Restructuring Commission, and that committee was made up of a representative from each of the hospital boards, and that person could not be coming forward to sit on the new board. So that was 4. Then each of the hospitals and Port Perry and Uxbridge actually were one healthcare corporation, North Durham. Each of those hospitals had the opportunity to select one person to represent them. The regional chair, Roger Anderson, chaired the nomination committee, and then District Health Council had some representation, and so did a network of health caregivers had representation. And they put names forward.
It's just so I'm trying to get it clear. The Health Restructuring Commission, which is a group appointed by the province,
That's right.
appointed a nominating committee,
They set
who
up.
appointed a board. At some point, will the public have some input in the future of this board?
The Restructuring Commission did not appoint the nomination committee. They designated representation only on the nomination committee. So the nomination committee was what consisted of representation from each of the former hospitals, from each of the former hospital boards, and those organizations selected their own representation. District Health Council selected, I believe, 3 representatives, and the network of healthcare providers put forward the name of 1 person. So although the composition of the nomination committee was determined by HSRC, the individuals who would represent those organizations were selected by the organizations.
Okay. In some other areas, hospital corporations have memberships that elect the boards, and that any citizen can take out a membership and become a voting delegate.
Yes, so do we.
Will that be the process for the next round? Will it be, in fact, the public be electing the rotation as it goes through?
Yes, as I mentioned, there will be an application process, but in addition, the membership, and we will have a membership just as we have in the past, the membership will also have an opportunity to nominate individuals to sit on the board from the geographic area that we serve.
Okay. And
were you thinking of applying, Councillor Nicholson?
I've been there, done that. I think I have a plaque.
I know that.
I'm going to be 1 level up by the sound of it. The question you mentioned that you're going to have open meetings. Where would your meetings be held on this Thursday?
This Thursday we'll be meeting.
Or whatever Thursday.
We have been meeting at various sites so that the board can become familiar with the various hospital sites. And this Thursday we'll be meeting at the Bowmanville site, at Lakeridge Health Bowmanville. Our last meeting was at Oshawa.
Is there a possibility at some point that a permanent or structured venue can be brought forward for the public? The public can sit in here. I've been in a number of the boardrooms in the hospitals. There's no chairs for members of the public to sit. And I'm just wondering, is it possible that at some point the hospital board would in fact meet in a more open procedure where the public and the media can in fact see what's going on?
Absolutely. Brian and I are working on that right now, as a matter of fact. And I know that several members of the public will be attending the meeting on Thursday. But as you mentioned, the board meetings in the hospital are not designed for big crowds, and we unfortunately do not have accommodations such as this council chamber, so we're working on that.
Could always be available to you.
Yeah, I'm only speaking for myself, but I'm sure council would have no objection to the health group meeting here.
Thank you
I'm sure
very
Rogers
much.
might even assist you with an opportunity of having a camera.
We may take you up on that offer.
My last area of questioning, and I don't want to get into it in detail because obviously it's very complicated. You mentioned a teaching process, and obviously that is a helpful process. But there are some negotiations that will have to occur between the city and the corporation dealing with some legal and property matters. Is it your understanding that meetings can be established in the future between representatives of both groups to resolve the outstanding issues, to bring as much information as possible to us?
I'm told that will be happening very soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Madam Mayor. First of all, congratulations to you, Judy, and to you, Brian, for your appointments, I guess. Now, I guess the first question would be the names of the hospitals. I've heard you refer to Lakeridge Health Oshawa. Is that how the hospitals are going to be referred to? Or?
Yes, we are Lakeridge Health Corporation, but when referring to the individual sites, we refer to them as Lakeridge Health Oshawa, Lakeridge Health Bowmanville, etc.
Okay, and what about the ones in the north? Will they be
Lakeridge
Perry and
Health
Uxbridge?
Perry, Lakeridge Health Uxbridge.
Okay, so the individual locations basically are how they're related.
It's just easier than saying the former Oshawa General Hospital.
Okay, thanks. Now, I guess there's some outstanding questions that have been asked by the Development and Corporate Services Committee, particularly you were mentioning about the OGH Foundation and setting the PACE funds, keeping them for the use at the Oshawa site and that kind of thing. Is there any contemplation of creating a Lakeridge Foundation, or what's the intended relationship to be with the existing foundations, the new corporation?
At this point, there is a separate foundation for each of the sites. What will happen in the future, I'm not certain. As you know, the foundations operate independently, and so that's certainly something that we will learn as time passes. But in the immediate future, we don't anticipate the creation of one foundation, not in the immediate future.
Okay. Can I ask then, what will be the relationship, like I guess the responsibility relationship between the board as it sits now, because that would be an overall board for the overall corporation, and the individual foundations?
Well, from what I understand, when fundraising was proposed by a foundation, they submitted details for approval to the board, and I anticipate that that will happen. As you know, Setting the Pace is a 2-year project of the Oshawa Foundation that is halfway through its time frame, and they are continuing to raise funds for cardiac care for the Oshawa site.
I guess that would be the keeping the pace.
Yes,
Setting
keeping
the
the
pace is
pace.
finished.
Keeping the pace, that's correct.
Okay, but I guess my question would be more, I guess it's an actual governance question, which was, I guess, when we got our delegation thing here, it said you were going to be dealing with governance issues. And it's something certainly that I've been, having ongoing questions about, which is the relationship between, I guess, specifically OGH and the OGH Foundation. So my concern would be, where is the level of overseeing? How are we going to be able to be sure that there's going to be not just an independent body that's out there with 65 million or 80 million or whatever it is they happen to have at this point? Because certainly there's been question as to accountability there, and I still don't feel that we've been given all the answers. For example, like I alluded to at the beginning of this, that there was some outstanding questions from the Development Corporate Services Committee asking about the relationships between OGH and the Foundation. And especially since we're reviewing the OGH commitment from the city, I think it's very important to establish where the roles are. And it sounds very loose to me that you're saying, well, yes, we may have a whole foundation for the whole corporation. So it doesn't seem to me that there's any kind of accountability between the foundation and the board as it's set up now. So,
Councillor Clark, from our perspective, I don't think that we're questioning credibility. As you know, the foundation operates separately from the hospital corporation. They have their own board of directors, and I have been advised that the committee wrote to the foundation for some information, and I know that they responded. It's possible that the committee hasn't received the correspondence for information, but I know that correspondence did come out, and that the questions that were directed to the foundation were addressed in the response. So you can anticipate, if you haven't received that letter, I know that it went out last week.
Okay, no, we haven't received it.
I received it for information, by the way.
Okay.
I don't sit on their board.
Okay, because no, actually that was a further question, because no, we haven't received the information to date, and I'm pleased to see that you're at least brought into the loop in terms of the questions that have been asked. And previously on the foundation, the CEO and the chair of the board of the hospital did sit on the OGH Foundation. So there was at least some tie, because we still don't have an explanation as to the formal relationship between OGH and the foundation, and actually what gives them essentially the right to collect money for OGH. We haven't, that question has been asked and that explanation has not been given. And in fact, I guess the reason for my discomfort is a letter that we've received previously from Mr. Hume, who's the former CEO of OGH, saying that it's a private company. So those are the reasons for my asking, what's the relationship between the foundation and the existing board, so that we do have some sense of accountability. And I'm not suggesting anything other than I believe that there should be a governance tie there. And I think that as a contributor, from a corporation point of view, from the city, that there should be established. What is the, so...
Certainly their fundraising activities will be presented to Brian Lemon and to our board. We're very pleased that they raise funds for the delivery of health care to the residents of Oshawa. And in terms of board representation, as you mentioned in the past, there were board members from the Oshawa General Hospital who sat on the foundation, and you have requested a list of the board members for the foundation, and you will see that 2 of the board members on Lake Ridge Health Oshawa, representing Oshawa, do sit on the foundation board.
Well, we did see that in the ad. I guess I could have turned that into a question by, don't you agree?
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much. I understand with the new corporation that the end goal is to reduce administration costs by not having, purchasing in each one of the hospitals, et cetera. So I understand that, and I think that's good that less dollars are spent on administration and more dollars in the healthcare. I think everyone supports that. The only question I actually have for you is, through this whole process, the name change, Lake Ridge Health Oshawa, it sounds like a bit of a sanitized name. I'm just wondering, why did you change from OGH? Everybody in Oshawa, we know Oshawa General, we just simply call it OGH. Why the name change? It doesn't sound good to me.
Well, I think that the residents in Bowmanville, Whitby, Port Perry, and Exbridge may not enjoy having their local hospitals renamed Oshawa General Hospital. That could have presented a problem.
My point is that you would keep Bowmanville as Bowmanville Memorial, Oshawa General, and you would just be under the umbrella of your Lake Ridge Health Corporation. I just don't understand the name change.
Give Judy a chance to respond.
There was a competition for a name that about 75 people participated in making proposals of new names so that we had a corporation with one name. A significant number of people proposed names that included Lake Ridge because the hospital corporation goes from the lake in the south to the ridges in the north. And prior to my appointment as chair, that name was selected as the name of the new corporation. Now I'm sure that the residents of Oshawa will continue to refer to the Oshawa Hospital as Oshawa General, and that won't create a problem for us. All we want to do is provide an excellent level of care for the community.
Yeah, I didn't mean to be critical. I have no problem with Lake Ridge Health Corporation. I just don't understand the need to change the actual hospital names. It just didn't make sense. We always refer to Oshawa General, OGH. It just seems simple. It's direct to the point. Whereas Lake Ridge Health Oshawa, it doesn't indicate to us what it really does. So I was just offering that as just my only criticism, and it's certainly not a negative. It just I just think we should keep names very simple, and I always felt that Oshawa General really spoke to the real issue.
It's an interesting indication. I was going to comment at the end. I've had more questions on the change of name than I have on the new assessment system, on the new tax system. Oshawa General Hospital is dearly loved in this community. It's respected. It has provided health care for decades. And you will have a tremendous challenge. I note that your office will be at the Bowmanville Hospital, and I think that part of the challenge is going to be inclusive, but to recognize that not one of those hospitals can match OGH for its level of care, the size, the technical capability. And so we will honor the name, I guess, in our history now, but we must honor the ability of Lake Ridge Hospital Corporation, Oshawa, to be the leader and not pretend that a very small hospital with a few beds and 1/10 the budget is going to be in the same league in terms of the provision of health care. So we're very proud of our hospital, and we have to accept change. But I can assure you, as Councillor Gray has said, I've had many, many comments in the community, and people are quite upset about it. So you're going to have to keep building that history back in. Thank you again very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Thank you. Welcome again to the community. Second item in delegations, Junior Achievement of Durham Region. I would welcome Donna Raitson-Kemp, the Executive Director, and Aaron Stratton. Would you come forward? Pick a side here. Takes longer to come around the other side. Who's going first? You will?
I'll start.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Diamond. We really appreciate the opportunity to address Council. We have a tiger by the tail at Junior Achievement, and we need the help of the community to get through this time. The energy and enthusiasm for Junior Achievement has grown incredibly in the past year. We have grown more in the last 12 months than we have in the last 5 years. Junior Achievement is a not-for-profit, and we've been in Durham Region for over 25 years. With the help of local business investment and volunteers, we provide business and economic programs to the young people of our community. I believe there's never been a more important time for junior achievement. I think if I asked you how many of you believe that our students are going to graduate from high school, they're going to land a full-time job with benefits, they're going to work at that job for 30 years, and they're going to retire with a gold watch, most of you would probably be inclined to disagree with that statement. These students are going to have to be able to turn on a dime. They're going to be working for 2 or 3 companies at a time. They're going to be working on contract. Regardless of what their career choices are, they will need a good understanding of business and economics. And that is our goal, to provide that to them. In 1996-97, we placed 7 in-school programs to 350 students. In 1997-98, we placed 46 in-school programs to 1,500 students. In the coming year, our projected numbers are reaching over 3,000 students in 80 programs. So our growth has been frenetic at best, and we're managing as best we can to keep up with the demand for these programs. It's a challenging goal. Our goal is to have a program in every school by the year 2003. But we believe that the future of our young people are worth the effort. We currently are running 3 programs and are planning on piloting 2 new programs simply because of the demand. Our first program starts in grade 5 and 6, and grade 5 and 6 students in 4 one-hour sessions, and these sessions are done by business advisors who volunteer their time from the community, learn about production, management, marketing, and organization. 10-year-olds are learning about sole proprietorship, partnership, and incorporation, and their understanding. At the end of these sessions, if you ask each and every one of them the difference between each of those, they understand. I think there's some of those topics that many of us didn't understand until well into our 20s. Another one of our programs is called the Economics of Staying in School. We call it ESIS for short. This is a really important program to catch kids before they consider dropping out. And if they're not considering dropping out, we catch them and we help them to understand what they might be good at, what areas they might like to go into. It's a reality check. We have students who say, I don't need to go to school. I'm just going to move out and be on my own. And we say, okay, let's take a look at that. Let's take a look in the paper and see what it's going to cost you for an apartment. And what does a trip to Shoppers Drug Mart cost? They're always amazed when you add up what a trip to Shoppers Drug Mart costs for shampoo and all those different things. So it's a good check for them, and what we do is we let them reach the conclusion. It's not our business consultants telling them. We let them reach the conclusion that it's very important for them to have an education. We let them decide where they want to be and how they're going to get there. Our third program is our company program, and I'm very pleased to introduce Erin Stratton to you. Erin Stratton is an achiever from our company program. She has participated for 4 years. She has won the opportunity to attend Jay's national staff conference called CanJack. She's met delegates from all over the world, and she's won the award for Outstanding VP of Production in the last year's session. I'm going to let Erin tell you about her experience with company program, and then I'll just briefly wrap up when she's completed.
Erin?
Thank you. As a student in the Junior Achievement Company program, we soon learned to run our own company from start to finish. We named our company and decided on who was going to lead our company. We decided on a market to which we were going to aim our product. Then we produced our product, whether it be candles, mez pads, gift baskets, clocks, or even boxer shorts. We then sold shares to our companies, which gave us money to start off and buy raw materials. We produced our products and then went out to sell them to our families, friends, and we even took part in trade shows, flea markets, and door-to-door selling. The most valuable part of being a junior achievement is the experience that you get. That will stick with you for a lifetime. In my 4 years of junior achievement, I've held all sorts of positions, from human resources and finance to marketing and production. I know how important it is to keep accurate records, especially when you have a few audits during the year. We learn how to deal with problems on the job site and communication between different levels of employment. We do all this with the help of advisors, volunteers throughout the business community, who donate their time and experience to help our company learn and grow. Without them, we would probably never get the guidance that we need. I myself have benefited tremendously from junior achievement. If it wasn't for junior achievement, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today making this presentation because I was scared out of my mind about public speaking. Through junior achievement, I've learned about liquidation, finding our break-even point, and even writing a shareholders report, which contains everything you could need to know about a particular company. My favorite part of junior achievement is not only making lifelong friendships, but holding a board meeting. We discuss how sales are doing, how the officers are working in their jobs, and we discuss and vote on how to fix problems, much like you do here at this meeting. As far as my future goes, I think I want to open my own business and try to be successful as I have been in my last 4 years of junior achievement. We haven't always come out in profit, but we learn. That's the whole point about business and economics. As the saying goes, we learn from our mistakes. Well, I've made my fair share of mistakes, and I'm ready to profit from my experience in junior achievement.
Thank you. Donna?
I always find it difficult to follow up after this. I think when the achievers speak, it says everything about what we do at junior achievement. It's amazing to watch young people turn into business people. In my first year with junior achievement, I would answer the phones and pick up messages, and I would have messages from junior achievers, and I was under the impression that I was taking a message from a parent. They were so professional, they left the message, it was clear and it was well understood, so it's amazing what they do. Our investors range from huge corporations like General Motors to small independent businesses like Breakaway Business Systems. In the past year, I'm proud to announce that Royal Bank has increased its investment by over 400% for junior achievement. They strongly believe in the value of our programs and the employees, and to the employees who conduct the sessions. Now, I know at this point you're asking yourself, how could I possibly help? Because this sounds so wonderful, doesn't it? We just ask a few things. We're on an awareness campaign. If you could possibly, if you believe in the positive effects of junior achievement on our young people, talk to 5 people in the next week and tell them about what you heard and what you saw tonight and let them know so that we can pass the message through the community. Also, you could consider facilitating one of our in-school sessions. We would love to have members of council in the schools. It only takes about 6 to 8 hours of your time. The students would love to have you there. We're also seeking energetic, enthusiastic board members. And I'll wrap up with a very simple statement. Young people make up 25% of the population, but they make up 100% of our future. So I think we need to invest in them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yeah, on behalf of council, congratulate you. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I've certainly participated in Watch Junior Achievement with awe. I've been to the annual awards, and just absolutely amazing what has been done. But I would also like to thank you very much, Erin. What fine examples we've had this evening of young people in this community, and how fortunate we are. Congratulations, and thank you very much. You did an excellent presentation.
Thank you for having us.
The next item is concerning item 1 of the 21st report of the Development and Corporate Services Committee regarding an application for variance for a sign at 428 Simcoe Street South. I have a representative from Pattison Signs, Mr. Just Cole, and Mr. Charles Gudicki. Would you come forward? Oh, you're on your own. Okay. Thank you. Presentations are up to 10 minutes,
okay.
And then if you would please wait to allow members of council to ask any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
The reason I'm making an application for the sign is I'm not putting up a new sign. There's an existing sign on the building now. The sign won't be any larger, won't change. It's just a sign company. I'm just getting a different sign company because they got a better deal, to be honest. But the extra income will come in handy for me to upgrade my building and keep my rents low. Right now, I'm having a hard time renting the building. I have major repairs. Unfortunately, your bylaw won't allow me to change companies. You are restricting me to one sign company. I am held prisoner by this company. They can do what they want with me, as they please. My lease is coming up this year, early next year, I should say. What they're going to give me next year, I don't know. And I'm stuck. The city of Oshawa is telling me who I have to do business with. And I find that very restricted because I can't tell the city of Oshawa who to do business with. And I don't think anybody in council would do that. It's a free business. It's open society. We should be able to do business who we want to please. And again, that sign will be there. It's no matter whatever council says, today makes a decision, that sign will be there. All I'm asking you is to give me a break so I can continue making a living and pay my bills and my taxes. And it's a problem with I I can't do it right now because Mediacom knows the bylaw, and they know they got me over a barrel. They got me over a barrel, and they're just laughing. Gould Patterson was fortunate enough to have interest and go ahead and give me an offer that was more beneficial for me. But unfortunately, I can't do it because the bylaw won't allow it. And I'm not changing anything on the sign. The sign's a fairly new sign. It's been there since 1991, I believe. So we'll be there for another 20 years probably. So your bylaw, I say you want to get rid of the signs, well, that's going to take a long time. You know, till that day comes is a matter thing. As far as us making the zoning area is commercial, there's a commercial plaza right across from me is Tim Hortons, and there's a plaza across from the plaza now with the plaza. It's all commercial area. It's a commercial street. It's not going to change much. There's lots of other signs along there too. It's not a residential area, and I don't see why the council won't allow it. I would ask the council to allow it. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Clancy.
To reaffirm that the sign is going to be there no matter what.
Yes.
Correct.
And
you're just asking for a new vendor.
Yes.
And the message will be basically the same.
Yes.
Now, what would you do? What would you do, Charles, if that sign blew down?
If that sign was to go down?
Yeah. No. If by an act of God it
Blew
came
down in the storm.
Well, then I would have to look at the situation and then see if if I can replace it or not.
You could put it back up, right?
I would
and you could
definitely.
use a new. So.
No.
I
No.
wouldn't be able to do that. Oh, we'll find out later. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rebecca.
Clarification. You're saying that sign is going to remain there.
Mhm.
So if you want to deal with another company,
Yes.
that structure that is presently there will remain there? I just want a clarification on that because I think some people are going to be misled here.
Okay. The sign will, unfortunately, Mediacom will not sell me the sign. So Mediacom will take it down and Patterson will put up a new sign, identical. It won't change size or anything.
So then once that sign is removed,
Mhm.
you will not be complying with the bylaw.
Well, no, but I'm not changing the use of the building.
We're talking about the sign. Once the sign
Perhaps
is
we'll
removed.
ask, when the report comes forward, we can ask staff to speak to whether it would comply and why
Just
it
that I was
doesn't.
concerned, Madam Mayor, that the statement was made that that sign was going to stay there no matter what. But in fact, if it is removed, then the bylaw is being contravened.
If it is removed under the bylaw, it cannot be replaced.
That's right. Okay.
Councillor Clark.
Go with a different vendor, you have to take the sign down and replace it.
Yes.
So the only way you can deal with the existing sign is through the existing company that put it up. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you aren't able to do a contract through any other company with the existing sign?
No, I can't do any contract. I've asked Mediacom to sell me the sign. They said no. Because they know what's going on. They know there's a sign bylaw there. They know that I'm stuck with them. So that's basically where they got it. They got me where they want them. And they got me where they can the next year turn around and give me nothing for that sign. I mean, they call the shots. I have no choices as the bylaw stands right now.
But I would think you would have a choice, because you could say that it doesn't need to stay there anymore if they're not going to give you anything.
Okay, we're not into debate now, just questions to the delegation. That's it? Okay, thank you very much. It'll be considered as part of the committee report. Item number 4, Mr. Lissick, regarding the 21st report of Development and Corporate Services Committee regarding parkland dedication fees. You know, be up to 10 minutes.
I will need 10
you know
minutes.
the rules, eh?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of my delegation tonight is to address a recommendation in front of you in regards to changes related to parkland dedication. At the committee meeting held last Monday night, I had the opportunity to address committee prior to it dealing with this issue. At that time, I asked committee to be included in the list of those individuals who would receive refunds for parkland dedication. As I see in the report in front of you tonight, I was not included. I am sure all councillors have had the opportunity to read the report, But what strikes me most by this report is the committee has recommended to pay those individuals who have complained about the charges, and that the staff's recommendation was amended to include those who have applied for building permits since September 1st, 1998. Initially, I would like to deal with those who took permits in protest, and namely Mr. Warbutton, Lucy Naylor, and Brian Martindale. These three individuals, in my opinion, are very smart, since they appealed these charges in protest prior to being issued a building permit. I would like to ask Council, where on your building permit application form is there a place where one can check off whether or not he or she is paying the charges in protest? Ladies and gentlemen, there is no box on the building permit application form. And secondly, why should those people who have applied for permits recently, and as reported in the press, that any units under review now by the city be exempted? Ladies and gentlemen, the recommendation is flawed. It is saying that it is okay for Mr. Warbutton, Mr. Martindale, and Ms. Naylor, but not okay for the rest of us. Your report says that the current bylaw 7792 has been out of sync with the development charges bylaw 11891 since the day of its passing. Oshawa is the only municipality in Durham that has been charging parkland dedication since it brought in the development charges bylaw. Apart from the fact that these charges are morally wrong, and everyone who has built accessory apartments under permits since development charges, it is my opinion all of us should get a refund. If Council passes the recommendation tonight, as it's written in the minutes, or as it's written in the agenda, you will open yourself to OMB and legal action by those of us who were excluded. You have the opportunity tonight to do what is right and refund all of those who are involved. I have heard the argument that it would be too onerous to refund those monies in the current economic climate. From the information that I was able to gather, the refund would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000. If you read the report and understand the intent behind the development charges bylaw, it was to have people build their apartments or accessory apartments to build them safe and up to standards. There's a report there's just a quote that I'd like to read from the paper. At the meeting, this is from the Oshawa this week, September 16th, 1998. At the meeting, councillors agreed with the staff report stating that the policy of collecting payment for all new apartments, quote, is inconsistent with the direction of provincial legislation, which is aimed at removing financial restraints to the provision of safe, affordable housing. The policy might stop people from updating basement apartments to building and fire codes, said Mayor Nancy Diamond. There's a quote. The mayor says, I think that this fee can be counterproductive, she said. We want them, quote, apartments to be safe and legal. And then the committee chair said, I'm glad that staff has agreed that this is an unfair situation. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it is very clear that you understand that the situation is unfair. The point is timing. When do you pay from? Do you pay everyone? Do you pay no one? Do you pay only the people who were smart enough to protest and the people who applied since September 1st, or do you pay everyone? If you have had, I'm sure all of you have had relations with both the provincial, federal government, even the city of Oshawa. If I need to go back against Revenue Canada, they entitled me to go back 3 years on my tax returns. So does the provincial government. The information that I received today from the Oshawa City Tax Department, if I stop paying my taxes, it will be 3 years until such time as the tax department of the city of Oshawa takes action against me. Ladies and gentlemen, it is clear the charges are wrong. Staff made a mistake. These charges should not have been applied since development charges came in. But the point is, this council has the opportunity to make it right. If you're going to pay someone, you must pay everyone. If you're not going to pay anyone, you'll open yourself up to both court and OMB. Ladies and gentlemen, I appeal to you to pay all of those affected. We have done what the province has said, and the fact that the city of Oshawa has not kept its legislation in sync with the provincial legislation, I think there's a mistake. And $100,000 is not huge money to make what is wrong in the past right today. Some people have said to me that only those should be paid that made the application. Just what I've gathered from the news, I know that there's been an application against the federal government by 3 persons for pay equity. And apart from the fact that it's under appeal now by the federal government, three people made this application to the Human Rights Commission, but the point is it applies to 14,000 people. So I would ask council to consider that in making its decision. The fact that 3 individuals made an application here, I think it should apply to all of us. Otherwise, it's wrong. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lissick. Maybe some questions?
Oh,
Are there
sure.
any questions from members of council? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Members of council, we're up to matters tabled. Are there any matters tabled that are to be lifted from the table? Huh? Councillor Nicholson, would you present the development? Oh, yes, sorry, Councillor Pitt-Rebecki.
Madam Mayor.
Well, got Councillor Pitt-Rebecki now. Matters tabled.
The council about having a recess momentarily before we get into committee reports.
Okay, members of council, would you like to take 15 minutes? Okay, just before we do that, Councillor Nicholson?
Yeah, I just was trying to move that item 3 be removed from the table and received for information.
Thank you. That item number 3 be lifted from the
I had a chance
table
to read it, it's garbage, so it's one.
and be received for information. On the lifting and receive, seconded by Councillor Clancy. On the motion, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, it's about 25 after. Would you 15 minutes and back, please? I should have replaced it. I didn't think of it. Councillor Nicholson, would you please present the report of the Development and Corporate Services Committee?
Yes, on behalf of the Development and Corporate Services Committee, I respectfully report and recommend to City Council our 21st report, and the Chair would like to question items 1, 2, and 4.
They don't let you do that at the region. 1, 2, and 4?
Got any left? 3?
8 would be referred to the in-camera portion, and I would ask that 7 also be referred as these are property matters. Could I have a motion to refer 7 and 8? Councillor Pitt-Rebecki, second by Councillor Dykstra, to the in-camera portion of the meeting as they are property matters. I have then at this time 1, 2, 4, 5 to be considered. On the remainder, excluding 7 and 8, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 1, Councillor Nicholson, variance of sign bylaw, Simcoe Street South.
Thank you. The problem we have with this situation is, I think in law it is absolutely correct, and we have the report that I think clearly outlines the legal situation. In practicality, I think we lead to some problems. First of all, in practicality, you do in fact tie somebody to one physical sign owned by someone else. The part that really, and I think that causes some major problems, but the part that really bothers me is what happens if you get to a situation where you're mandating that certain signs must be maintained under control of certain groups. And if the sign were to be moved, location changed, replaced, repaired, any of that major nature, due to age or whatever, you lose your non-conforming status. My concern is I don't want to see a whole lot of these rooftop signs in deteriorating conditions where the owner doesn't want to replace them with newer signs because they lose their non-conforming status. So we end up having a whole bunch of older signs that once we get a good breeze, down they come. There has to be a proviso somewhere in the Act that allows the structure to be changed as long as it doesn't appreciably change the use. I use an example, and I guess to take it to the extreme, does that mean if somebody blows a tire on a mobile sign and takes that mobile sign away and brings a new mobile sign, then in fact the non-conforming use is wiped out? If I look at the legal process here, I'm told I have to maintain the existing sign. If I move the existing sign, for whatever reason, I lose my non-conforming status. Well, how does that apply to mobile signs? They get moved all the time. They get exchanged. Sometimes you get I've seen some cases where a mobile sign was taken and a larger one was put up. Does that mean that the first one was legal, the second one isn't? You know, and I think we open a real can of worms here. I don't believe it was the intent in passing the bylaw to develop a situation where we would tie any property owner to one company, or to lead to a situation where we would have deteriorating signs with no hope of them being replaced and made structurally sound. I think we have a problem. My opinion is the matter should be referred back to the committee so they can meet with staff to review the bylaw and try and come up with a solution that meets the needs of both legally of our plan to dissuade them, but also the practicality of how do we make sure that signs remain safe.
Councillor Boychin.
Madam Mayor, I move that this matter be referred back to the committee for further consideration.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Gray. On the motion to refer back to the committee for further consideration, those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Item number 2, parkland dedication fees and reimbursement. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Thank you. I'm having a little problem, only again with the practicality of this motion. To me, there are two separate issues. One, the issue that Mr. Warbutton brings forward, I believe, is a very reasonable course of action in that you're talking about a house that literally exploded. It was replaced with another structure of reasonably the same size and dimension. No additional stress were put on services, no additional stress were put on the neighborhoods. How we could charge a certain fee because the house blew up, I think is onerous to the property owner and an extremely bad taste for this council to charge because your house blew up. I know I'd feel very sad if my house blew up, not just because it blew up, but if somebody asked me for permission to pay a fee to put it back up again. I think we'd all be here echoing Mr. Warbutton saying, wait a minute here, what kind of government have we elected here? The second issue, the other appeal, is not an issue of extraordinary circumstances. It's a dispute with the wording of the bylaw and whether or not that bylaw follows the intent of the provincial legislation. I believe that if you are going to give refunds to those individuals, you must give refunds to everybody in the equal situation. I think to choose any other time is for us as a council to be arbitrary, to basically decide who is getting a refund and who is not. And there can be no justification for being arbitrary in the application of a bylaw. It is extremely difficult to pick a date. I've tried racking my brain a couple of times trying to think what is the appropriate date. The committee tried to pick a date of September 1st to see if that was fair, and there were some compelling arguments for that. It also opens up some can of worms for others that beyond that date. You could go back as far as picking up maybe the date of being when the first letter received. It was received by our staff and by our council. At least we were aware of the situation. Maybe that's the date. But I think at the end of the day, whatever date you choose will be arbitrary. The only fair and equitable process on the second area of contention, the one not raised by Mrs. Ward, but by Mrs. Naylor and Mr. Martindale, is to in fact say that these charges were collected under a policy that was established in the past, and that the new policy, starting tomorrow, will be we don't collect these charges. Then we can at least walk out of this council chambers and say we've applied the law equally to all our citizens. Whether we agreed with the charge or not is a matter for political debate, but the law would be applied equally. If you try and pick an arbitrary date, I think you make a mistake. So I think this council has a very simple choice here on the second part. Either everyone is refused a refund and we start clean and fresh tomorrow morning, or everyone that falls within the bylaw must be refunded. I don't believe it is fair and equitable to arbitrarily pick who gets a refund and who doesn't. In a democracy, the law applies equally to everyone. So I just urge you, if you're going to give a refund, take it back to the beginning, or don't give a refund at all.
Thank you. Councillor Aker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to speak to the decision by the committee to, and the recommendation by staff to move from charging cash in lieu of parkland when legalizing an apartment, and to perhaps...
Councillor Pitt-Rebecki, please.
To perhaps, and the motion hasn't carried yet, to no longer charge because of the provincial legislation to in fact make sure that our auxiliary apartments are in fact up to standard and safe. And it's not to say that there was not a valuable and justifiable reason to collect the cash in lieu of parkland. It's that when you have a higher density population, you take monies to ensure that you have some open space parkland for the community to enjoy, and that everyone contributes to that space. And so I think there's some misunderstanding that the city of Oshawa has a mandate to keep their all their bylaws flowing with all of the levels of government. And in fact, we can make our own decisions, and in fact, there is a recommendation on the floor right now to rethink our, a dedication of parkland is a very important thing, but perhaps maybe there is now a even more serious issue before us, that we have some auxiliary apartments in Oshawa that in fact are not up to standard and are not safe, and that in fact is maybe a more important issue at this time for our citizens, and that we want to ensure that they are safe. And so that is really I think the movement on the way of thought. We have no mandate to simply keep all of our bylaws in sync with the thinking of other governments. And as well, I guess on the timing on which we in fact perhaps make a change from charging for auxiliary apartments a cash payment in lieu of parkland. That I guess the September 1st deadline was perhaps suggested to catch those people that were in the midst of the process, and so that some people that say, well, we're in the process of it, and some people we don't. Perhaps the September 1st deadline is not the best way to do it. I don't know. I don't know if we could have a comment from our Commissioner of Planning whether or not it's maybe perhaps the timing should be those in progress, or because I would like to have something that's fair and equitable as well. I don't know if we can have a comment.
Are you looking for a question to the Commissioner as to certain benchmark dates and what that could involve? For example, the day that the one referred to here was the building permit was issued, September 1. Mr. Commissioner?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the way that the committee's recommendation is worded here, section 6 of the recommendation, it indicates that the recommended changes apply to building permits issued after September 1st, 1998. So that would in fact apply to permits that have been in process for a number of months. And I think the committee's intention was to be as fair as possible for those applicants who do have and have had permits that have been being processed for some time, but for certain technical reasons may not have been issued. So since the committee meeting, I did check to see how many permits would be affected by this, and so there would actually be 9 permits, and they range from people who who have had applications in process, some I think going back to, as I recall, sometime in the spring, but for some reasons, for some technical reasons, the permit hasn't been issued at this point. So the intent of this recommendation would be after September 1st, As I said, it affects 9 permits. Those permits would have their, or would not, they wouldn't be refunded, they just would not be charged the parkland dedication fee. And indeed, that would also apply to part 3 of the recommendation to the Nailers and the Martindales, who have asked that the fee not be applied. So when they do submit their building permit application, if the recommendation is approved, they also would not be required to pay the fee.
The individuals named in item 3 have not yet been issued a building permit?
That's correct.
Okay. I misunderstood that. Okay, so September 1st would give 9 applications that would be exempted from paying the fee if we took that date.
And, sorry, to follow up, through the chair, the commissioner thought that the September 1st date was fair and equitable. Could you expand on that, the reasons for that?
Well, I think it
time-wise?
gives, I think it's fair to say that most applicants are thinking that they're going to have to pay this fee and are not aware that the council is considering the possibility of discontinuing this fee. So rather than them being issued a permit or being told that their permit is ready to be picked up on, say, last Friday, and then saying, well, in order to get this fee, you'll have to pay this $625 parkland dedication fee. That seems unfair in relation to the fact that the council today may be considering or is considering the waiving of the fee. So it seemed to give some consideration to those people who might not know that indeed if they waited until September 22nd to pick up their fee, assuming council adopted this recommendation, that the $625 would no longer be required to be paid in order to get their building permit.
Okay. Thank you. So you're saying you think it, from your professional stance, that's reasonably fair to have a catchment area that goes beyond midnight tonight?
Yes, I think it's very fair.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any further speakers on item number 2. Councillor Gray?
Just a few further questions. I'm just wondering if for example, we had someone who had paid the fee, the process is still ongoing. Would those people be also, because they haven't been finalized as far as their approvals are concerned, would they be included in the refund process, or would they in fact still be under the $625 of parkland dedication? I need clarification on that, please.
Commissioner?
I guess from time to time, council does change its fees and its fee structures, and I don't know if there's, I'm not aware that there's been any history of any refunds to people who may have, paid perhaps fees that have gone down. So in terms of anyone who's paid the fee, now there wouldn't be any consideration of a refund, because then it becomes a question of, well, where exactly do you start and stop the payment of refunds in terms of the
Commissioner, I think the question was if it's still in process. Councillor Gray said if the approvals hadn't been finalized. If the approvals haven't been finalized, then a building permit would not have been issued. And if a building permit has not yet been issued, then they would fall under the new regulations, which would have no fee. Correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood Councillor Gray's question.
Okay, you said Councillor Gray not quite finalized, so they wouldn't have a permit yet.
I'm also wondering, what was the rationale for choosing the September 1st date? Because I see, what's happening, I'm getting some conflicting messages here. In item 5, we're saying that these actions would be implemented tomorrow, September 22nd, if these pass tonight. Yet I'm seeing in item number 6 that the recommended changes apply to the building permits issued after September 1st. So I'm seeing 2 different dates. I'm just seeking clarification. Why was the September 1st date used as well?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe the September 1st date was used because it would I guess, allow some forgiveness for those permits that were currently being processed, and it turned out that, as I said, that there are 9 of them that are currently being processed, but they're being processed and the fee isn't being anticipated to be paid by people who aren't aware that the council is considering a possible deletion of the fee. So,
excuse me, my understanding was that it was if someone had paid the fee in September.
That's correct.
Again, if an application is being processed, a permit has not yet been issued, effective tonight, if this passes, then that portion of the fee would be deleted.
that's correct.
Okay, so the 9 that you gave us, are those permits that have been issued since the 1st of September and to which this application would apply?
No. They are permits that are still to be issued.
Then it does. Then they would come under the category of effective tomorrow.
They would if this recommendation.
If it passes. Okay. Do you know if any have been permits issued since the 1st of September? Just trying to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to make sure we're all talking permits that have been issued.
Yeah, no, Madam Mayor, I don't know of the 9 which ones, for example, might have been issued on Thursday or Friday of last week.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Gray.
Okay, I'm having some difficulty understanding, as I say, the rationale of which dates are being used. I'd also just like to question the item 4 to the committee chair. Is the committee planning to look at a recommendation for this registry of accessory apartments?
I want to stress to you to clearly read the words as outlined in number 4. That the acceptance report DCS 98252 and its recommendations do not imply approval or denial of the suggestion of a registry of accessory apartments. The issue was raised in detail by the staff in the report. The committee is not wishing to imply any acceptance or denial of that suggestion.
So when does your committee plan to get off the fence and actually make a recommendation one way or the other? I think when we look at this, it's an entire package, and I think we've got to make sure that we do this correctly. And yet part of your package is this sit on the fence type of recommendation that, you know, it may or may not include a registry of accessory apartments. I think this needs to go back to committee. You need to work out your dates, and you need to decide whether or not you're going to be recommending to this council this accessory registry list, and the council at that point can render a decision. But the way it is right now, I'm not certain we're going to be well protected on the dates, and certainly I have concerns that we've raised this specter of a registry, which incidentally is just another way to skin the cat, because you're going to waive your parkland dedication and you're going to come up with this fee for, you know, presumably an annual registry of accessory apartments. So I think the committee needs to take this under advisement and look at the entire picture again so that this council is protected.
Just to address your question.
I'll let you address it, yes.
As an experienced chair of a committee, you're well aware that it is impossible for a committee to pass a policy without a report attached to it. We are very good at the Development Corpuses Committee. Clairvoyant, we're not. Therefore, we have no ability to determine the pros and cons of a registry until staff give us their suggestions. And I would think, as an experienced chair, you would understand that it's simply common courtesy when staff have an idea that the committee receive the idea first before we judge it. By including Part 4, what we're stating to this council, I think stating to staff as well, that there seems to be very little support in the committee for the registry. We echo your comments about additional charges, but we are willing to give the commissioner the opportunity to at least make his case before we render judgment. That's the only process I'm aware of that a committee can follow, short of becoming clairvoyant overnight, and I'm sure that's the same process that's followed at operations as well.
Thank you.
And I'm sure as an experienced chair, you would agree that everything must be looked at in its totality, and you have part of a package here and part missing.
Councillor, we're not doing cross debate here. You'd asked the question, and the chair of the committee stated that the point is it's not yet to be decided. So I have Councillors Kolodzi, Pidrebecki, and Mike Nicholson. Councillor Kolodzi.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to request that item 2 be referred back to the committee for further clarification and edification.
Okay, that the item be referred back to the committee for further clarification?
And I'd like to see the cost involved if we decide whether we're going to give money back or the cost.
Okay, there isn't a question here of a rebate in this motion. On the motion to refer back to the committee, Councillor Nicholson.
Just a question to the previous speaker. I would like some clarification, edification on what he means by clarification and edification, please.
Just like to move back for clarification to committee.
Clarification means clarification, he said, to clarify.
What does that mean? What is he asking us?
Okay, Councillor Kolodzi,
All the points raised in tonight's debate, I don't think we know exactly. There's concern about there's concern about what does September the 1st mean in terms of permits. Even you had a question about, you know.
Okay, so the motion is to refer back to the committee for clarification and edification.
Right.
Moved by Councillor Kolodzi, seconded by Councillor Gray. On the motion to refer, those in favor? Those opposed? The referral is lost.
That's
Madam
clear
Mayor,
and edified.
Madam Mayor, could I ask some questions?
Certainly.
To the chairman of the committee, you spoke earlier in this evening about, you know, whether we should give to the 3 people involved the refund, and if we did, then you said it wasn't fair. What kind of dollars are you talking about if we gave it to everybody in terms of this refund for this dedication fee for parkland? There was a figure banded out of $100,000.
Councillor Kolodzi, would you define everybody? You mean from when this,
When it started back in
every person who's ever paid?
Yeah, the bylaw.
Okay.
I can address that. The staff report refers to an annual cost of approximately in the neighborhood of $12,000 a year. Simple math, going back 7 years, would clearly give you your number.
Okay. And on item number 6, how much money are we talking about from September onwards that you're going to be canceling? How much is it going to cost the city in lost revenue?
I personally have no idea. Maybe I could ask the commissioner whether there would be any permits issued since September 1st.
Well, September 1st date, to you, Madam Mayor, is adopted. The city would not be collecting $625 on 9 permits.
Okay. No, let this be
Parkland dedication.
I got you.
Okay,
I want to be
Councillor
clear on
Nicholson.
this to the commissioner. The 9 permits are those that are currently in process and the fees have not been collected. The question was, what if we, number 6 carries, how many permits have been issued since September 1st to September 21st that would require a refund?
I don't have that information, Madam Mayor, with me.
Council, I still have a couple of speakers, but I would ask Council to consider as we do this to divide at 6 and defeat 6 to clarify the issue. It becomes effective tomorrow, as Councillor Nicholson said earlier in the meeting, and I think that we've been at cross purposes in not understanding those in process or issued. And that may just solve it effective tomorrow. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done, Councillor Kolodzi.
The only request that I have is I want all items divided. I want all items voted on, 1 through 6.
Okay.
Because they're all very important.
Councillor Pidrebecki.
Mayor, I'm getting a little more confused as the night draws on here. We're now down to possibilities of refunding 1, plus the possibilities of 9 others that are in the mix right now at the planning department, if in fact they paid. My question would be, and I'd like some clarification maybe from our legal department, if we pay 1 or if we pay 10, and set a September date as cutoff, and we know that we have been collecting these funds, parkland development, illegally, presumably under provincial law. Okay, we know we shouldn't have been doing it, whatever way you want to define it. What would be if someone had several buildings that they had paid for, say in the last 3 to 5 years. What would be their recourse? Where would we be legally if that person were to come forward? This is what bothers me a little bit as to where if we do tonight, set the timing and put it in place and say as of this date, nobody gets paid. Where are we for those people?
Madam, you can't answer that legal question in open session.
Okay.
Well, that's why I'm asking it, because I think we need to
Well, then we
reconsider this.
have a lengthy in-camera session. If you would like a legal opinion on the ability to do the one for the house that literally blew up, then we could take a referral to the in-camera session for this item, get our legal opinion, and then come back.
Well, if I might, Madam Mayor, that I've spoken to it, I would make a referral to our in-camera session to get some legal opinion on this.
I think the referral in this case is appropriate in that the councillor asked a question that requires an in-camera answer. Seconded by Councillor Nicholson, that this item be referred to the in-camera portion of the meeting to seek a legal opinion from our solicitor.
To be clear on the motion, and once we receive our opinion, the issue will be dealt with in open session.
If council so decides tonight, then absolutely, it would have to be dealt with in open session.
Some of us still want to speak.
Yes. On the motion to refer to the in-camera portion, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. What's your win your bet, though? Daycare centers, the location of daycare centers, Councillor Brian Nicholson. Councillor Brian Nicholson, item number 4.
Yes, I have a motion, an amendment to Part 3, and I'll read it out. Move myself, I'm Councillor Mike Nicholson, that the current policies limiting as-of-right use to daycares and residential zonings be amended to increase the allowable...
Slow down, please. Slow down.
Sorry?
Current policies
limiting as-of-right use to daycare in residential zonings be amended by increasing the allowable maximum number of children to 15. So number 3.
Okay, that the current policies where it now allows 5, that it would be increased to allow 15. Okay? The amendment is on the floor.
Basically, what we have now before us is 2 extremes. We have a situation where you basically can have a home daycare, for want of a better terminology, of 5 or less, and you simply are licensed and regulated by the Region of Durham and by the Province of Ontario. If you want to go to 6, you have to apply for site-specific zoning in a residential community or place your daycare in an industrial park. Well, no one, I think, would advocate putting a daycare that takes 75 children and cramming it into a single-family home or a small operation. I think there has to be some kind of middle level that allows that certain uses, subject to, of course, site plan and other locational criteria, have to occur in residential communities. Our children should not be warehoused in industrial parks. I ask you, and I want to just draw council's attention to the map, and I want to just draw your attention that you really have to see the map to understand exactly what we do. And it's page 348-8 in the committee report. And if you look at the map, and I hope everyone has it, if you look at the map and you see a large number of black hatched areas, and I counted them up, and there's a little over 100 of them. And of those black hatched areas, 75% of those 100 are existing school sites. That last check, I hadn't noticed the school boards advocating turning all the schools into daycares. In fact, the policy seems to be exactly the opposite. The other areas that are black hatched out there are industrial parks, some of them next to chemical and asphalt operations, or the downtown, or some commercial strip areas along some very busy regional roads. None of those locations, I would submit, are appropriate for young children in daycare to be located next to. We have in this locational criteria almost a situation where it is next to impossible for anyone to have a mid-range or medium-sized or even a small daycare without doing the site-specific process. If somebody wants to put in a school under the zoning, whether private or public, they can have hundreds of children in areas residentially. And we don't say, no, you can't do that. But for some reason, we have a bylaw that says if you want to have 8 or 10 children in a professionally licensed daycare operation, the appropriate place to put it, barring a site-specific application and the cost and delay that would occur, is jam it in the industrial park next to the foundry or next to the cement operations. It just doesn't make any sense to me. There has to be some mid-range. And I believe that if you put a limitation of a small daycare, usually owner-occupied, owner-operated, in small residential communities, it's a much more palatable approach than either having kids crammed in basement apartments or in jams in the residential homes, or forcing people to go through the process of site-specific to have larger operations. Our children should be able to leave the daycare and go to school and return to the daycare. The schools are in the residential communities. The playgrounds are in the residential communities. Every amenity that we want our children to go to are in the residential communities. It makes no sense to me that the only thing missing from the residential communities is our children. And therefore, as a mid-range, I'm suggesting to the council that if we change the regulations to allow up to 15 as a right, if you're above that point, you still go through site-specific rezoning. We then have a mid-range or a medium criteria. You're not simply going to get 15 crammed into small homes, things like that, because there is a whole bunch of approval criteria that a daycare has to go through to with the ministries of health and others to make sure that they're licensed and appropriate. But it seems to be, and I think of a number of locations where there's larger homes where 15 children in a small daycare would be appropriate. And next to a school is extremely appropriate. But let's be fair in the process and don't make it onerous and basically drive daycare out. There's a reason I submit to council why there are very few daycares in our community. One, the regulations sometimes are onerous, and secondly, it is next to impossible to find a working site without tremendous red tape. By making this amendment change, I believe you loosen up that red tape while still maintaining the appropriate regulation to meet the need. And we would then have children operating in daycares back in our residential communities. And I, for one, who live in a residential community, I have no objection to daycare. I get no complaints that we have wild children running out of the daycares creating havoc in the streets. I get very few complaints about daycares, but I tell you, I have some great concern when the daycares in my ward are either on busy streets or jammed into industrial parks.
Okay. Councillor Kolodzy.
Yes, Madam Mayor. I don't like the idea of 15. I think 10 is better, but I have problems with, they're regulated things like that. The concern, I remember when this came forward about daycare to investigate this, we had an application on Harmony Road North, and I was in support. It was, what number was it? Yeah, they wanted 12, and they had an ideal site, but it was, they had to go through the rezoning. And in that particular case, this probably, if we had the 15, this probably would have been allowed. But my concern is somewhere along the line, the residents in that community are going to be upset with a process that sort of allows 15. I don't know what the number is, whether it's high or, I think 15 is high. I don't know if 10 is too high or 5 is the correct number. That's my concern. So I do believe that, daycare and appropriate settings are appropriate. And I felt in that particular case, the one on Harmony Road North was, but the council of the day did not think of that situation. So that's where I'm coming from. Somewhere along the line, I think the residents have got to have input on it. So that's why I can't be supporting that number of 15.
Okay. Councillor Mike Nicholson.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I'm going to start by making an amendment to the amendment for the number to go to 10 instead of 15. I think that might pass council a lot better than 15.
Who's your seconder, please? So you moved 15 and now you're reversing to move 10, okay? Moved by Councillor Mike Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Brian Nicholson. Councillor Mike Nicholson, you have the floor.
I've heard here a few times since November after I got elected when we looked at businesses that This council encourages small businesses to be run in houses in residential neighborhoods. Yet we don't encourage daycares to be run out of houses where they should be run out of, especially in school zones. I know many single moms, I guess, and also family homes in my neighborhood where the kids go to school that are used for daycares, and the kids go there for 2 or 3 hours before school. That mom will walk the kids to school, bring them home at lunch, feed them, take them back, and get them after, and the kids might be there for 2 or 3 hours afterwards until their parents come. I think this is a lot better than shuffling off to daycares in industrial places. They're in their own neighborhoods. They're safe. They're walked to school. I think this is the right way to go. I don't see any problem with it. I also see that most home daycares are a lot cheaper than going to the big business daycares. And the way the economy is going now, and a lot of families are hurting for money, that a home daycare that's run by a mother or an ECE in their own house may be a cheaper alternative. Not that it's any worse of a daycare than maybe some of the big daycares. And some of the big daycares have full waiting lists to get into them. So I see this as an opportunity that's good. 10, I think, is a lot better than 15. But, you know, the whole thing is this council said numerous times that they encourage these type of businesses to be run. Now, I don't know how you can encourage somebody to run a snowplow business out of his basement, or, you know, 3 or 4 people living in a house that may be one family that's running a real estate business out of their house, but yet we say to the kids, if you're more than 5, go down to the industrial park where the big tractor trailers and everything else is. You can't be in your own residential neighborhoods where the schools are, the parks are, the stores are, you know, their friends and everything else. So it doesn't make any sense to me. So I would hope that council would support the amendment to the original motion, I guess. That I think this is a good way to go, and there's all kinds of provisions that they would, you know, somebody would have to go to. They couldn't put 10 kids, you know, in one room that's in the back of a semi in the middle of a, you know, a subdivision or something like that. That wouldn't be allowed. So I don't see any problem, you know, anybody thinking that would happen. They'd have to conform to a lot of different things before they could run a business out of their house. So I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Just before we continue, I have 2 more speakers. To the Commissioner, residential, as of right, anyone in the city can put in a daycare in their home for up to 5 children. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay. And the report is recommending, and the committee itself has recommended, that 5 hold, and that anyone who wishes to go into a residential zone with more than 5, be it 10 or 15, could simply do a zoning application, in which case we would check the building for traffic, etc.
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay, because we seem to be all over in the numbers. Councillor Clark, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask a question as to whether or not there have been any research, and I suppose this is to the mover of the motion, any research in terms of provincial restrictions about numbers or requirements for permitting and that kind of thing.
Is this to the mover of the amendment?
Or if he can answer it, because I would hope that he would have had an answer to that.
Well, the difficulty is Councillor Brian Nicholson has presented the motion on behalf of the committee, but as he didn't agree with it, he's presented an amendment, and now we have another amendment from the same committee.
Well, I would say he has essentially made it a friendly amendment by seconding it.
Okay, well, yes. So to whom are you placing your, putting your question?
I would hope that originally the mover of the original motion would have had this information at hand without arbitrarily picking a number. And I guess if he can't answer it, I asked our Director of Legal Services, and she didn't have the information at hand, so she was going to research that.
Okay. Would you like to hold your question? I have 2 more speakers, and perhaps Mrs. Evans will be back, and I'll put you at the... Okay. Councillor Aker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think you had raised sort of a couple concerns I had. This report speaks to the consistency of daycare centers, and not the reason for the allocation of 5 children to a home daycare occupation, a home occupation of providing care to children. And I'm concerned that the numbers are coming out and there's no justification, there's no report as to why, and I'd be very concerned that we'd be setting up a situation where 15 children and vehicles are driving these children to a specific spot, and kids are getting out of cars, and there's maybe perhaps only one person taking care of 15 people in a home that...
Excuse me, the amendment's at 10 now, just
Sorry,
to be
10.
accurate.
I apologize. 10, well...
one person.
Sorry. Well, I'm concerned about, the justification behind this, and on face value, and I certainly have no report here that speaks about home occupation of daycare, but from a first sight, I'm comfortable with the 5, and unless I had a report on why we would change that number, I really could not consider changing it at this point. And I think the report speaks to the consistency of daycare centers, and I think we're getting a little off, and I would hope we wouldn't make any arbitrary decisions on our home care operations. And so I can't support the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Boychin, on the amendment to the amendment?
I'd like to bid
10?
7.
Pardon me?
I say I'd like to bid 7. I mean, we started at 15, now we're down to 10. Now I think I'm bidding 7. Do I hear 6? That kind of thing. I think I can't support this amendment, the original amendment, or the amendment to the amendment. I think this is an area that is a very serious matter, and I think we're changing policy of this council on an ad hoc basis because somebody thinks that 10's fine. No, 15, no, maybe 7. I don't know. Maybe 7 is more appropriate than 10 or 5. I think we're getting a little bit foolish in this process. I think we should stay with the recommendation that the original committee recommendation. And the other thing that causing me a great deal of concern is that some of the councillors that have spoken in favor of encouraging home businesses are the very same councillors that not too many months ago or too many weeks ago were vociferously opposing home businesses because there were certain kinds of vehicles parked in the driveway. Another situation, certain kinds of vehicles were parked in a backyard. Now, we start getting into 15 children. Now, I don't know what ages they start looking at with these children. But when you start looking at the playground equipment that may have to be installed in the yards at various places, who's going to start monitoring it? I know for a fact that you have children, you can't control the sounds that they make when they're playing or when they maybe fall and hurt themselves. And we have to stop and think as well, I think, about the neighbors. We seem to have a great deal of concern about individuals that work on a night shift at GM or at some other business or factory in town. They come home at very early hours of the morning and have to sleep all day. Now, if they're next door to one of these 15 or 10 daycare facilities, are we going to then be receiving complaints about the noise that the kids are making in the backyards while they're playing? So I think that there's more to this than simply trying to pick a number out of the air. And I think if we're going to want to give this some serious consideration, I think we should be doing it in an appropriate fashion rather than doing it on the council floor on an ad hoc basis. And so for the time being, I'm not going to support the amendment or the amendment to the amendment. I'm going to support the original recommendation that's before us. And if the councillors that are interested in this matter are genuinely concerned about the issue of the number of children in a facility, then I think it's appropriate that we bring forward the appropriate motion at the appropriate time, requesting that there be the appropriate studies and staff reports prepared to justify the increase in numbers or not increase the numbers.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Our Director of Legal Services, Mrs. Evans, is returned, and I believe she has an answer with regard to the provincial status.
Okay. Mrs. Evans?
I had an opportunity to look at the Day Nurseries Act, which is the provincial legislation and the regulation passed under that act. Obviously, I did not read it from start to finish. I was only gone 10 minutes. But I did find out that the concept of a day nursery
is a place with more than 5 children without common parentage, as opposed to private home daycare, which is the temporary day care for reward or compensation of 5 children or fewer, except that a private home daycare agency would be daycare provided in the home, but at more than one home. So you could have a company that offers a service of placing children in daycare. They're placed in private homes, each of which has less than 5 children, but the agency has several of these homes. If you want to operate either the private home daycare agency or the day nursery, which is 5 or more children, you must have a provincial license. If you want to be a private home daycare provider that is with 5 children or less in your home, there's other things like under 10 years of age and that kind of thing, but generally 5 children or less, then you do not require a provincial license. The regulations passed under the Act contain the standards that the ministry reviews when they're issuing a license, such as the amount of floor space per child, counter space for children of certain ages, and that sort of thing. So the ministry would examine the facility in determining whether or not that facility was appropriate for a license.
So basically, once you go above 5, you move into a licensing and a very different category of daycare.
Correct.
You require to be examined and approved by a provincial agency.
Thank you. Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that we still need some more information. I'll make a referral back for staff so that staff can implement this in a report back to us and we can determine that.
Is that just on the amendment for the numbers?
Refer the whole thing back so that we can, because then we can do it as a comprehensive thing. We're not dealing with an
So the
individual
motion is to refer the daycare item back to committee.
Yes.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Dykstra. On the motion to refer, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item number 5, the easement for servicing. Councillor Bob Boychin.
Yes, just a brief question. Unfortunately, I wasn't at the committee meeting last week. The recommendation says that the city grant a subsurface easement in perpetuity to the YMCA. In perpetuity is a long, long time. Probably outlasts the building, and I was wondering why we wouldn't say that you grant an easement for some more definite period of time, as opposed to just saying, I just see, like, the building may not, looking way down the line, things change, and I can see that if we give it an easement in perpetuity, problems could develop. If we said something there, that an easement for as long as the YMCA or its successor
operates their facility
as a recreational facility or whatever, so that at some point in the future, it may be the distant future, mind you, but at some point in the future, if the use changes or something, there's some significant change, that we would have an opportunity to maybe exercise some control.
Okay.
Over the situation.
Let me add, before you give up your opportunity to make an amendment based on the answer to the question, Mrs. Evans, could you tell us why you would use in perpetuity rather than the suggestion as long as the water and sewer services, as long as the building is used as a recreational facility?
Actually, we don't use that language in the actual easement document. In fact, the purpose of the easement is set out, and it would be for purposes of servicing a building. If there was no building there anymore, the purpose of the easement would fail, and the easement would be terminated.
Okay, so if we, for council to give you the authority to prepare the document, if in perpetuity is deleted, we say the appropriate easement?
Certainly.
Okay.
And appropriate, yeah.
For the appropriate time.
Do you want me to
Councillor
make that
Boychin,
amendment?
would you move the amendment that in perpetuity be deleted?
Yes, and that words, that be substituted for the appropriate easement.
Okay. The seconder on that?
The subsurface appropriate easement.
Councillor Dykstra, on the amendment, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 7 and 8 are to the in-camera portion.
Do we not need to vote on that as amended?
Okay, yes, thank you. To delete. On the motion as amended, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I thought we'd already spent the appropriate hour on that one. You see, it was real quick. Are there any questions to the chair of the committee? Operational Services Committee report, please, Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The Operational Services Committee is pleased to report its 22nd report featuring items 1 to 5.
Okay. On 1 to 5, are there any items to be questioned? There being none, those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Questions to the chair of the committee. Now we do it. Questions to the chair. Councillor Boychin, Councillor Pidwerbecki, and who was the third hand up there, please? Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Boychin first.
Just a very brief question. I noticed that where Stevenson Road enters into the south field of the airport, that there are huge potholes developing in the road, and I'm not talking just little potholes. Well, no, not quite tank traps, maybe armored car traps, and also a considerable amount of dry, loose gravel that's located on the asphalt there, which I think could create a bit of a dangerous situation and perhaps a liability situation for the city of Oshawa. I was just wondering if I'm not going to ask a question, I'm just going to suggest that maybe the chairman of the committee might approach staff with respect to correcting the situation there or repairing the road.
Thank you, Councillor Boychin. I'd be very pleased to bring that forward to the work staff so that we can rehabilitate that road so that, as you say, we don't have the deep potholes where people take out the suspensions on their cars just to go into our airport. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
I wasn't grandstanding. Questions,
Councillor Pidwerbecki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question possibly to the chair, to our real estate department, Mr. Pierce. We've been at Terry Fox Park. With
Excuse me, why would you be doing a question to Mr. Pierce when it's questions to the chair of the committee? And Mr. Pierce
well,
is
I can wait till later. It doesn't matter to me. I can wait till later. He reports to you.
No, to you?
No, Mr. Pierce is Development and Corporate Services.
Okay, I will wait until it's over. I'll ask Mr. Pierce at the appropriate time.
Good, thank you. Councillor Brian Nicholson, question to the chair.
Yes, it's a very small item. We've done some work in conjunction with the Regional Roads Project at the corner of Malaga and Park Road, and we've done some resurfacing and other work in the area, except that we haven't yet put any lines down on the intersection. Now the region does some of that, and they've got their lines down, except the local road seems to be missing its. And I'm just wondering if you could endeavor to have staff coordinate their repair and work on the local road, what's still left with the regional work, which is all done.
Certainly, I'll bring that forward to the staff, and if the new asphalt layer is down, then by all means we'll make sure it gets striped accordingly.
And also, Jason, that the region's laid a whole bunch of sod. It's a very nice area now, it's well grassed, and the city's portion is a weed field. And I'm just wondering if possibly we might want to kill the weeds and put some sod down as well.
Indeed, that would be included actually as part of any works that we would do. And if we're trailing the region as far as getting our sod down, you can be assured that we will make sure that our portion of the road is also looking as good or better.
Councillor Pidwerbecki, question to the chair.
My question is going to be two parts. So to the chair of the
on the park part.
On the Terry Fox part, I'd like to know that we've been patiently waiting in that area now for I think up to 2 years with regard to playground equipment. My understanding was that we had set aside a budget for that park. I'm wondering what the status is with regard to the playground equipment at this point in time. Do we still have the money for it?
It may have been consolidating the park first.
Well, this is why I was trying to get Mr. Pierce involved in this too, but I'll find out where the money is first, and then we'll talk to Mr. Pierce later.
I don't see it as part of our outstanding items, but certainly if we had committed to doing playground equipment, I'm sure the committee would look at that accordingly. But just give us an opportunity to at least take it back to committee, and we will make sure that we furnish you with the information by the next council meeting as to what the action plan would be.
Thank you. I need a motion on the committee of the whole report. If there are any questions That would also be in camera because it's a property matter. Is anyone prepared to move that item, please? Thank you. Moved by Councillor Boychin, seconded by Councillor Kolodzy. Are there any questions? There being none, those in favor, opposed, carried. Are there any notices of motion to be presented this evening? Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Actually, it's a motion, Madam Mayor, which may become a notice if I can't get approval to try
You
this
can't get it
motion.
passed? Okay. Notices of motion previously given. Councillor Nicholson, you have one on helicopter use.
Yes, I do. I am going to proceed with it tonight.
You would like to refer that to consideration of the airport business plan?
Oh, I don't know when that's going to come back.
It's coming. Councillor Brian Nicholson.
Move myself, seconded by Councillor Mike Nicholson, that the issue of expanded helicopter use at the Oshawa Airport be referred to the airport manager and a report be developed outlining the impact of helicopter operations, and that no action to finalize expanded helicopter use be considered until the report is received by council. Basically, I believe this step should have been taken before we expanded helicopter use, but even though that's only a temporary and interim step, the use we have now, I think we really need to understand the impact of helicopter operations, especially expanded such, not just on the residential community, but also on the airport community and what effect it has in relation to fixed-wing aircraft. I believe it's not an onerous report. I think it's something that normally should be back before us before we take the final step to decide whether or not we wish to enshrine this helicopter operations. And I think it will give us an appropriate background to make an informed decision.
Okay. Council, I would have to ask for, at the minimum, an amendment. It is, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I've misread. Excuse me. I jumped a line in my reading. I still think this could well be part of the airport business plan, but as a referral. The motion is before us. Councillor Gray.
Thank you very much. Just to remind Council that indeed when the Operational Services Committee brought the recommendation forward originally, that we did include a proviso that we would be reviewing the operations, that it was a 6-month temporary, I believe, to start with, and that we would be reviewing the process. So whether or not we order up a report through the notice of motion process or through just the ongoing direction of the committee, it's not going to make any difference, but we are planning to look at this regardless.
Okay. We have the motion before us. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Motions, proclamations. Councillor Nicholson.
Move myself, seconded by Councillor Mike Nicholson, that the City of Oshawa proclaim October 4th to 10th, 1998 as Fire Prevention Week, October 18th to 25th, 1998 as White Ribbon Week, November 1998 as Lung Awareness Month, and September 21 to 26, 1998 as Prostate Cancer Awareness Week.
On the motions, those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I have another one.
Yes, Councillor.
Move that leave council rules be applied for to allow the...
I'm sorry?
The council rules be waived.
Okay. In order to allow the introduction?
Allow the introduction of the following motion. Move myself, seconded by Councillor Joseph Kolodzy, that in the spirit of openness and accountability, the City of Oshawa offers the use of the Oshawa City Council chambers without charge to the Lake Ridge Health Corporation for their use in holding their monthly board meetings, and further that the City of Oshawa also offers the use of city boardrooms where practicable for the meetings of the board standing committees.
Thank you. The motion is to waive the rules to allow the introduction of this motion. Requires a 2/3 majority to waive the rules. In the alternative, Councillor said he'll make it a notice of motion. On the motion, those in favor to waive the rules? Opposed? The rules are not waived. Okay. We'll have an in-camera session and come back to do the bylaws. Councillor Pitterbecki?
As for in camera, I'd like to put a report of the Harbour Commission or the Harbour Negotiating Committee on the in-camera portion to report to the council is to update them on what's happening. Can we have that this evening?
So for the in-camera portion?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other business before we have the motion to go in camera? And then we'll have to do a 10-minute recess again to allow Rogers to close down their cameras. Could I have a motion to go in camera for property and legal matters? Moved by Councillor Pitterbecki, seconded by Councillor Dykstra. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. If you'd come back about 10 minutes, please, we'll just give Rogers time to close down.